All right, I'm Larry Krueger. He's Ryan Smith, and welcome to the Tales from the Bay podcast, edition number 4, I believe, as we head into week 4 in the National Football League. Niners this week at home against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday Night Football to wrap up week 4 in the league. And for the next hour plus, we've got you, and we're gonna go through a bunch of things here. Larry Krueger and Ryan Smith. Why don't we start right with the 49ers, a little autopsy on the first 3 games of the season. The 49ers are 1-2 through 3 games. Rye, what's your takeaway on the start to the year?
My sort of grieving process every week is, especially after losses, I get really down and really critical of the team. Then about this time, Thursday, Friday, I start to be like, okay, I'm going to take away the positives. And right now, I'm actually feeling positive. I know they're 1-2, and I know that this is probably one of their easiest stretches of the schedule. But man, their defense is so dang good. I cannot get over how good they were in that Broncos game. I mean, they were playing a doubleheader in the, after the first quarter. They were on the field the entire game, and they allowed 1 touchdown drive. 1. So I'm feeling good. I think that the Niners, I think the NFC, they're lucky. The NFC's kind of weak right now. I'm pretty confident they're still going to make the playoffs. But, man, it's not going to be a good look if they go down 1-3 and back-to-back losses on national television. That's a rough look.
Yeah, no question. I would say it's as simple as, they have a 20-point win at home, and they have 2 losses on the road. And what happened in those 2 losses on the road? Well, the first game, they just had way too many penalties, and they lost their focus, and they let the Bears extend some drives. So just too many penalties in that first game, and then the rains came. They tried to come from behind, and you got a young quarterback and a ridiculously sloppy field. So, but if there was one thing I would point to in that first game against Chicago, penalties. In this last game, I agree with George Kittle, who said afterwards the whole game came down to the 49ers had 3 turnovers. They had a safety, and they were 1 for 10 on 3rd down against Denver. So turnovers against Denver, penalties against the Bears, and, you just don't win in the NFL. When you're -3 in turnovers, commit a safety, and are 1 for 10 on 3rd down, you don't win. You just don't win. It's too much to overcome. So still, despite the fact that they played really bad offensively and had no real rhythm to speak of, they were still right there with a chance to win both the Week 1 game against Chicago and the Week 3 game against Denver. So here they are, Week 4, Rams rolling in, divisional opponent. 49ers have won 6 consecutive regular season games against the Rams. So definitely Shanahan has had McVay's number, but that would be my autopsy on the first 3 games. The defense is looking incredible, and the offense not so much, right? The defense is 3rd in the league in points allowed, 2nd in the league in total defense. That's yards allowed per game. Number 1 pass defense in the entire league is the 49ers.
With no Jimmy Ward.
No Jason Verrett. So they've done that on defense. On offense, the 49ers are 28th in points and 23rd in total offense, which is yards per game. So I just think that with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays, with a weaponry that includes Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, that it's bound to turn around. It's bound to turn around, but penalties and turnovers will get you beat every time. So it's time for them to clean it up. So, but that being said, let's talk a little bit about the offense. What is wrong, in your opinion, with the 49er offense? I just gave you the numbers. 28th in the NFL in points per game, 23rd in the NFL in total offense as far as yards per game allowed. Yards per game, period, not allowed. So offensively, they're 28th in points, 23rd in yards. What's the issue?
For me, I think the issue boils down to a lack of explosiveness in the offense. And it's crazy to say with all those weapons, but, you go back to 2019 and yes, they still had Jimmy G, and, Jimmy G was throwing the deep ball, but that that, now that play action boot's been kind of taken out of the Shanahan offense. You can't really do it anymore. So there's no more wide open Emmanuel Sanders down the field. The other aspect they had was Raheem Mostert, Breida. They had these guys that were just freaking so fast, and they could make explosive plays in the run game. They could break, 65-yarders in the run game. This year, I mean, Jeff Wilson, who we caught up with, and we're going to play the interview at the end of this podcast, he's a hell of a player, and he's a guy you'd want, to go to battle with. But he's not the most explosive back, and it's kind of, it was tough. Like, almost the entire workload was put on him. So if you go back to that Denver game, he had the one for like 40 yards, and then he had one for 18 yards. And after that, him and Deebo Samuel combined 15 runs for 29 yards. That's not going to cut it. That will not cut it. And Jimmy is Jimmy, and Jimmy had a bad game, and this is what he's probably going to have a good game versus the Rams, and it's going to be annoying. But the main thing is they got to get back to their identity. They have to start bludgeoning people in the run game. It has to be consistent. I'd rather see, consistent, 7 yards here, 7 yards here, 7 yards here, as opposed to, one 18-yarder, one 40-yarder, and then everything else was for 2 or 1 or no gain. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at if you take away Jeff Wilson's 2 big runs, he had a 37-yard run, he had an 18-yard run, then he and Deebo carried a combined 15 times for 29 yards. So Jeff Wilson Jr. picked up 55 of the 49ers' 88 yards on 2 carries. They're struggling to run the ball. Now, Elijah Mitchell's out for the year. They don't have a dynamic runner.
Is he out for the year?
I mean, not out for the year. He's on the IR, I should say.
Yeah.
He's out right now. And right now they're leaning on bigger backs that don't have as much home run capability. We may see more Jordan Mason. But that's really it. The 49er run game has not been there. The quarterback play has been awful. Just go back to this last game. 4 sacks, 3 turnovers, and a safety. Jimmy G really struggling on third down, especially. The 49ers went 1 for 10 on third downs. Jimmy G was 3 of 7 for 18 yards passing on third down. And Jimmy is completing only 53% on third down for the season. So he's struggling on third down. Is it the lack of reps that he had this summer? Possibly. That could be it. Is it the lack of reps he has establishing rapport with his receivers? That could be it. It's a number of different things, I think, when you look at this offense. Turnovers and penalties, quarterback play. Some people have questioned Kyle Shanahan's play calling. I just think that you kind of hit on it. They're not as dynamic in the run game as they've been in past years, and they're not getting a lot of big plays in the run game. So that to me is a big part of it. They missed Kittle early. He's a key cog, obviously. Not having him in the run game or pass game, hurt the first couple weeks of the year. And we've just seen, it seemed like Trey Lance had a real good rapport with Ayuk. And we've seen Deebo in the backfield a year ago really surprised teams and kind of caught them off guard. It doesn't seem to be doing the same thing this year. So I think they're searching for, they're definitely searching for a more dynamic element in their backfield, but they're also searching for, a little bit of consistency just throughout their offense. 49ers, by the way, for those of you who keep track of this stuff, the Niners and the Rams are the opposite teams. The Niners are 55-45 run pass. The Rams are the opposite. The Rams are 46% run, 54% pass. So the Niners have run it more than they've passed it. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe they need to start throwing it around a little bit more, and maybe that will open up the run game if they can get their passing game going. But yeah, it's a weird situation because when you think of the weapons that they have and Kyle Shanahan calling the plays, and it's early in the year, it's not like weather. I mean, the Ram game or the Bears game, there was a lot of rain, but typically we're in the part of the schedule where weather is not really a factor. And yet the 49er offense is really struggling to even just stay on the field and extend drives. the Niners defense held the Rams to 9 3-and-outs. The 49ers only had 1 3-and-out against Denver, but they just have not been able to put up points. They're really struggling in the red zone.
They'd get it seemed like they'd get, one play for like 15, 17 yards, but they were their field position was so awful. Like they were starting every drive, it seemed like, on like the 10. Even on kickoff, it started right off the bat with Ray McLeod kind of, I don't know if it was a great decision. I mean, I'm not really sure. It was a tough play, but, he ended up at like the 14 to start a drive. And going back to what you're saying about the third down, it's like, we all know who Jimmy is. We all know who Jimmy is. Jimmy is not a guy who you're going to feel comfortable with just putting him in all of these passing down situations where the defense can just key on him. I actually kind of like the idea of him passing a little bit more early in the downs. I heard some statistic. I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me, but I think he was something actually pretty good passing in that game on first down, just because, they're not expecting it. I mean, the Niners are a run-heavy team. So, I'm interested to see what Kyle kind of dials up, and if Jimmy maybe has a little bit more freedom. I'm not sure. But talking to Jeff Wilson, he's like, man, our identity is the run game, and we're just going to keep going back to it. And I think that's part of the devastating thing with Shanahan's offense is like, man, even when they're struggling, they're always going to go back to the run game, and it's just so frustrating for other teams. Like, once they get it going, it's just like, it's coming, and you can't stop it. So,
well, we'll see if they can get it going. I mean, Debo, by the way, has 111 yards on 17 carries, and if you look at that, you say, man, that's not bad, 6.5 yards a carry. But if you take a deeper look, from the stat sheet, it shows 51 of those yards came on one carry against the Seahawks. If you take that carry away, Debo's got 16 runs for 60 yards, which is, under 4 a carry. That's 3.75 a per attempt. So I'd like to see them try to get Debo going. To me, he's unstoppable when he can get 2 or 3 strides before he's got to kind of slow it down with defenders around. If they could get him in more of a full stride look, not like a pick and slide guy where he's trying to kind of tiptoe through the hole, where he's like, full on, sprint, whether it be a jet sweep, something where he can get 2 or 3 full strides. I think that he's a guy who's relatively easy to bring down if he's picking and sliding and doing kind of a tiptoe through the lane or through the line of scrimmage. But if he's a guy that can get a full head of steam going, I think he's a guy who's exponentially more difficult to bring down. So I'd like to see Debo on some runs more to the perimeter and see if they can get him in full stride so that he can kind of deliver some punishment to the defense like he's kind of known to do. But the other side of the thing is that the 49ers right now look like they have a historically great defense. How good do you think this Niner defense is?
I mean, I think it's the best defense in the league. I mean, this is how good I think it is. I'm going to be starting them in fantasy football against the Rams, the high-flying Rams. I think this defense, I'm expecting some turnovers this week. They didn't get any last week. They came close on a couple of Melvin Gordon fumbles, but I'm expecting some turnovers. I'm expecting them to, another big story we haven't hit on is Trent Williams is out. But guess what? The Rams' offensive line is reeling right now as well. So it's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of heat on the quarterback on both sides in this game. And I think that this 49ers defense really has a chance to be historically great. Like, I'm talking the best 49ers defense, in 25 years or so.
I just think the 49ers on all 3 levels. Now, they don't have Azeez Al-Shaair. He's got the MCL sprain, so he's out for a while, probably at least a month, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. But, man, their 49er defensive line is very deep, and then they added Mooney Ward and Womack on the back end. They were going to get Jimmy Ward back and Jason Verrett back. That's going to even make their secondary better. But I just think now that they have Mooney, Ward, and Mosley playing at a high level, it just gives D'Amico so many more things he can do. The one thing that was interesting in watching the Denver game is Denver stayed with the run. Yeah. They really did. They weren't getting a ton done. I think there was like 3 yards a carry, but 33 runs for Denver for 101 yards. And that to me was interesting, that teams if the 49ers struggles continue offensively and they can't turn these games into one-sided games and they allow these teams to hang around, they're going to have to defend the run for all 4 quarters. And you may see teams try to stay with the run game like the Broncos did through all 4 quarters of the game. Now, this matchup this week is interesting because I just told you Rams are only they're 55-45 pass run. They run it a lot less than they pass it. But in this game, after watching Denver have some success in keeping the 49er dominating the time of possession, keeping the 49er offense on the sidelines, well, the Rams try to do that. Well, I'm looking at the Akers Henderson split, and it's basically 50-50 in their backfield. Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers split the carries basically right down the middle. Will the Rams stick with their run game and feature their run game, or will they go back to what worked for them in the final drive of the NFC Championship game, which was, Cooper Kupp and their receivers against the Niner DBs? I think that's really the interesting matchup here, is that the Rams have Allen Robinson, they have Ben Skoranek, and then they have Cooper Kupp, who might be the best receiver in football, and the Niners have a rebuilt secondary. How that battle gets, who wins that battle between the Niner DBs and the Ram receivers, that could go a great distance to determining who wins this matchup on Monday night.
Yeah, I think Cooper Kupp, he's so dang good. Matt Barrows said it, and I think he's absolutely correct. If Cooper Kupp goes for 100 and a touchdown, I think the Niners should feel pretty good. Like, he's that good that that is satisfying. You just can't. It also goes back to the Niners offense, where I don't know. I don't know what your feelings are about Kittle this last game. It seemed like they kind of left him in there to block a lot. But Jimmy has yet to find a guy that it seems like he is in sync with and just feels super comfortable, kind of like a safety blanket. I think back to 2017, it was Goodwin. 2018 hurt, but 2019, I felt like Emmanuel Sanders became that guy and completely changed the offense. He was so comfortable with them. This year, it's hard because Ayuk pretty much got blanketed by Surtain, who has allowed like 40 yards on the whole year. So he's incredible. So that's tough. But now he's got Jalen Ramsey, and it's like, where's Debo in the pass? It seems like they're covering Ayuk as if he's the number one receiver. Debo, I would love to see Debo get a little bit more involved in the passing game. It seems like Kyle it feels like he's running like a vanilla version of the Shanahan offense from last year. And he's like, well, the Debo thing worked, but people are ready for the Debo thing now. That's another interesting thing, is nowadays, because like all the film is on everyone's phone and tablets and all this stuff, it's like people solve stuff so much quicker because the data is just available, versus back in your days when you were scouting and stuff, like you had to put the tape together, and like I'm sure that took forever. Nowadays it's like boom, boom, boom. Like you can't stick with your tendencies or you're gonna get passed by.
I just think Jimmy just needs to be sharper overall. This was his lowest rated game. This game against Denver was his lowest rated game going back to the 2020 season in week 5 against Miami, when Jimmy played with an ankle sprain and didn't play well. So he's coming off of a horrendous performance here. He was sacked 4 times. He had a safety on a play where he just walked out of the back of the end zone. He had a terribly costly interception. He had a fumbled snap. He completed 53% of his passes on third down. The Niners only completed 1 third down the entire game. It came in the fourth quarter. He was 3 of 7 for 18 yards on third down. So just overall, Jimmy Garoppolo needs to be a lot sharper for the 49ers to win games. There's just no question about it. Was it rust? I don't know. Was it Denver's defense? I don't know. Was it just the lack of reps that maybe Jimmy had in camp? I'm not really sure. He was making his 48th career start.
Yeah.
He's played a lot of football. He knows these weapons. He knows this offense. The people saying, well, he didn't have the playbook. That's not a factor. Jimmy Garoppolo's been in this offense for 4 years. He knows the playbook. Outside of Kyle Shanahan, he probably could teach the offense to somebody else. So I don't buy that Jimmy didn't have the playbook. But what you can't manufacture is the work and the reps. And the one thing, who needs football practice the most? I think it's the quarterbacks and the receivers, because the quarterbacks got to know how the receivers are running different routes. They've got to know, they've just got to be in total lockstep. And Jimmy knows these receivers for the most part. I mean, these guys have all been here before this year, except for Danny Gray and Ray McLeod. But, the reps are the reps, and there's nothing to replace it. Nothing replaces the practice reps. Nothing replaces receivers running routes and you getting a good feel for them and them getting a good feel for you and communicating a couple things. So I just think that as we go, Jimmy's going to get sharper, and his rapport and kind of feel with his receivers is going to get tighter and better. And I think overall it will help the 49ers. And then I also think we may see a little bit more diversity in their running attack as far as number of carries. I don't think it's going to be Jeff Wilson exclusively. I think you're going to see more Jordan Mason. I think they'll start to trust him in the weeks ahead.
I think they got to. I mean, I think they need more speed. They need more athleticism. They need stuff that, kind of throw a wild card out there. I mean, and that is such a good point you made about the receiver chemistry. I mean, people can laugh about like the offseason stories that seem like puff pieces. Like, for example, in basketball right now, it's like, oh, Zion Williamson lost all this weight. Well, coming into when Stafford got traded to the Rams, the whole thing was like, oh my God, he's attached to the hip with Cooper Kupp. They're going and getting breakfast every morning, and then all of a sudden, he literally turns into Jerry Rice, and they have like some sort of telepathic connection. You see it with Brady when he doesn't trust receivers. They're gone. They're done. There's a reason why he goes on vacation with all these guys. So it's going to be interesting to see who Jimmy. I kind of think that Danny Gray is going to develop a chemistry with Jimmy G. I think that kid wants to work. He's so excited for the opportunity. I mean, I saw them. We both saw them, talking in the locker room a little bit today. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little Danny Gray action. And I mean, man, just get the ball to him in space, even if he doesn't know the plays or whatever. It's like they can't just keep giving the ball to Debo and hoping he's going to bust an explosive play. They need to diversify.
Yeah, they also need to get it done up front. I mean, there'll be no Trent Williams. He's got the high ankle sprain, so that means he's out probably 4 to 6 weeks. They tried Jalen Moore for a series. It didn't work out. They went to Colton McKivitz. Colton we talked to as well this week, and we'll let you hear some of that conversation. But Colton's interesting. I mean, can Colton McKivitz and Mike McGlinchey block Leonard Floyd and A'Shawn Robinson? I thought if there was one difference maker in the NFC Championship game that we weren't necessarily anticipating, outside of Eric Weddle, who made a couple big plays in the run game, I would say it was A'Shawn Robinson. A'Shawn Robinson just played his you-know-what off. He was terrific. And to me, it really starts right there. Can McKivitz and McGlinchey at the tackle spots block Leonard Floyd, who's electric coming off the edge? He's an outside backer in this defense, and A'Shawn Robinson, who's a big base end, who's got a little, he's got strength, he's got size, he's got explosiveness. He's no picnic. So to me, that's the huge thing in this game. And then also you got to remember, the one thing about Bobby Wagner is Bobby Wagner knows the Niner offense. He's seen it a lot. And I thought he really bothered the 49ers last year on delayed blitzes. Now, granted, it was a different defense he was in. He was in Seattle's defense. Now he's in the Ram defense. But I just think that if you look at the 49ers, they're inexperienced inside with Jake Brendel and Burford and Banks at the guard spots. And you can't turn your head on Bobby Wagner. If you think Wagner's dropping into coverage and you turn your head, well, as soon as you turn your head, he's going to shoot a gap and try to sack the quarterback. And at this point, Wagner as a blitzer, as a delayed blitzer, is so good. He's like Hufanga. He's smart. He does his film study. He reads it. He knows the tendencies, and he's convicted. So when he sees it, there's no hesitation, and he goes. So to me, Bobby Wagner in the middle still with a pretty good Pro Football Focus grade, 85.6 for Wagner. He's playing at a high level.
Ranked second amongst all linebackers. That's,
he plays a Hall of Famer. He's going to Canton for sure. And he can beat you as a delayed blitzer. So if the 49ers lack communication up front, it won't just be about Hollins and Floyd and Ashawn off the edges. It's going to be about Wagner shooting through the A gaps. And if he reads it, he knows what he's looking at, and he's aggressive. So to me, I think that's the challenge for the 49ers this week with the Rams is, can the Niner O-line match up with the Rams D-line? The Rams D-line no longer has Von Miller, but last we checked, the Rams D-line was dominating the 49er offensive line. So that's the big question. Jimmy needs to play better. The Niner O-line needs to be able to block. And the Niner DBs have to be able to cover LA's wide receivers and tight ends. Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Tyler Higbee, Ben Skoranek. The one thing about Stafford, he's completing 73% of his passes coming into this game, but he's got 4 touchdowns, but he's got 5 picks.
Yeah,
he'll throw you a pick, but you got to catch it. And he'll make mistakes, but you got to capitalize.
Yeah, and so with that, do you have a prediction for this week? This one I have the least feel for of any of the 3 games. I'll just say that now. Heart says the Niners are going to win this game, but I don't know. I also could see a world. It's just like how. Was last week an aberration, I guess, is what we're going to kind of find out. Is how rusty, how off is Jimmy G right now? Is he, is this something where, the Seattle game he was good, and this is kind of a classic Jimmy G, he has a bad game? Or is he going to, if he plays bad again, things start getting a little weird. So my official prediction, I'm going 49ers to cover the spread. I've got the 49ers winning 27-24. Actually, scratch that. I'm going 24-20. 24-20. Yeah, I think the Niners eclipse the 20-point mark.
I'm going under. I'm going low-scoring game. The Niner defense is allowed an NFL low 3.9 yards per play. Denver, with a Hall of Fame quarterback on a perfect weather night in their backyard with a healthy contingent of weapons, had 9 3-and-outs. 9 3-and-outs. So I'd say the Niners keep the Rams down. I think it's a run-heavy game plan. These teams are also both in the bottom 6 in the NFL at pace of play. So they don't play fast. They play slow. And I expect both teams to play slow. I'll say 17-12. 17-12 49ers. They keep them out of the end zone. The Rams get 4 field goals. Niners win at 17-12.
Oh, I thought you were going to say there was going to be another safety.
No, I'm going 17-12, low-scoring game. I think the 49ers will do a good job controlling the Rams' run game. I think the 49ers will have more success running it in this game than they've had, this year so far. But, yeah, I expect a low-scoring game.
Couple touchdowns from Jimmy.
And just a game where, once again, it's a lot of Mitch Wishnowsky. It's a lot of field position. It's a lot of punts.
Guy's earning his money, man.
Yeah, I do. I think the 49ers will not take a lot of chances. I think they will. I think you'll see, Debo with some runs, maybe Ayuk with some runs. But I think they'll keep the ball out of the air. And I like the 49ers to win a low-scoring game.
How many explosive? Do you think that the Niners are going to get any explosive plays?
Yeah, I do. I think they're going to try to take some shots on some explosive plays. As I said, I could see Ayuk busting a run. I think it'll be interesting to see how much they utilize Kittle as a blocker in this game versus as a receiver. I guess it's really going to depend on how Colton McKivitz is faring at left tackle. But I think the 49ers will be able to establish the run, and I think we're going to see more of Jordan Mason.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be introduced this week, and I would not be surprised if you saw Ayuk or Danny Gray on, a run play for the wide receiver, jet sweep, reverse, something like that. And there may be some big plays that come out of that.
Yeah, my 3 question marks that I'm just really keeping an eye on this week is I want to see if there's more Jordan Mason, I want to see if there's more Danny Gray, and I want to see if Kittle gets more involved in the receiving game. Those are my 3, and you know what? I would be very excited if all 3 of those guys kind of stepped it up and had big games.
Well, I'm looking for Hufanga to crash that backfield and make a number of plays, number of tackles for a loss. I think the 49ers are due for a +2, +3 type game turnover-wise. And if that's the case, I think the 49ers could win more comfortably. But I'm expecting the Niners to be +1 and to wind up winning, as I said, 17-12. They get 2 touchdowns and a field goal, and the Rams get 4 field goals. That's how I kind of see it. And we'll see what it looks like. These division matchups are always tight. These teams know each other well. And, it's funny. Shanahan and McVay have a little bit of a rivalry. They were hired the same year. And McVay's got a Super Bowl, and Shanahan's still pursuing his. So that only adds more juice to the rivalry. All right, couple things before we get into our interviews. Let's talk about the biggest surprise in the NFL 3 weeks in. If I say to you, what is your biggest surprise in the NFL 3 weeks in, or what is maybe not the biggest surprise? What's something that has surprised you thus far?
Jacksonville. I was not expecting Jacksonville. This is a 2-parter. Jacksonville looking this good, Trevor Lawrence looking this good already, and then on the flip side, the Colts looking like crap. I mean, I thought for sure they're going to bring in Matt Ryan. Frank Reich is up there in like the first coach to be fired list now. Their team every year, it's like I feel like they're Ballard. Like a lot of media people have good relationships with him, and a lot of people are really pro Frank Reich. But it's like, at some point, you got to start getting it done. I mean, they're in a weak division, and Matt Ryan looks like he's totally cooked, which I was not expecting. And then, Doug Peterson, man, give him credit. He got a lot of crap on the way to getting that Super Bowl, but I think he's a better coach, I guess, than I thought. And it's just cool to see. It's cool to see Trevor Lawrence, start to play well. So I'd say that's probably my biggest surprise, other than maybe the Eagles whomping people. But I don't foresee it to continue.
To me, the biggest surprise is the Raiders are 0-3. The Raiders had a Devontae Adams. That's a Chandler Jones. And they're still, and they got a new regime. They brought in New England's, a lot of people from New England, including Josh McDaniels. And the fact that they are 0-3 going into the 4th week of the regular season is a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought they would be better than that. I didn't think they were going to win the division, but I thought they were going to be really, really competitive. And the fact that they've gotten off to the 0-3 start is a little bit of a surprise to me. It just kind of shows that offensive line means a lot. And if you don't have a great offensive line, that can hurt you. As far as the other side of the spectrum, I just was so impressed by Dallas's defense last week. Now, how much of that was the New York Giants offensive line being a sieve, and how much of that is Dallas? I'm looking at Dallas's D right now. DeMarcus Lawrence, the kid from UCLA at tackle, Dorrance Armstrong, Anthony Barr, Micah Parsons. They got some nice players. Trevon Diggs and Jordan Lewis on the back end. They added a couple young DBs as well. I just think Dallas suddenly looks like they've got some real. I don't know how good they're going to be against the run, but man, if they can get a lead on you and they can send a lot of pass rush in your lap. Parsons, Barr, Armstrong, Lawrence, these guys really look good. They had 15 or 18 pressures on Daniel Jones last week. If Dallas defense can pressure the quarterback at that kind of a rate, who knows? Who knows with Dallas? They might. They've got an easy path to the playoffs in that division. If they wind up healthy, they look improved. They really do.
They do, and it's crazy because they lost Randy Gregory, who also looks fantastic for Denver. But yeah, their defense is it's top 3 in the league. I think the Niners are a step above them, but they're kind of similar teams at this point. With Jimmy, both on the backup quarterback. I mean, Jimmy G's better than Cooper Rush, but their defenses are going to carry him. I actually think I think before the season I gave out take a flyer on Nick Bosa for MVP. I think put a flyer down on both Bosa and Micah Parsons. If either of those teams end up winning the division in kind of a weaker NFC where, Rodgers is having a down year, Brady's having a down year, the narrative, all it takes, like, for example, this Monday night, if Nick Bosa has 3 sacks versus the Rams and they win a tight one, it's going to start. The discourse is going to start. So, yeah, I think Dallas defense is definitely a surprise.
So that leads us to our final topic here before we get into the player interviews, and that is, let's take a look 3 weeks in at the NFC, because the NFC, you kind of hit on it there. It's like one of those things where I think every 3 weeks we're going to see a new favorite in Las Vegas. The Eagles have passed Tampa Bay as the NFC favorite, as the favorite to win the NFC and go to the Super Bowl. The Eagles with Jalen Hurts, are 3-0 out of the chute. They got a good run game. They got a terrific O-line. They brought in A.J. Brown. They have Devontae Smith. And then they bolstered their defense, bringing in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the back end and Big Jordan Davis up front. And, the Eagles look pretty good. Now, I don't know if it's going to last, because I'm not sure that you can run your quarterback 13 times a game and get to December in the NFL with him in one piece. But who do you like in the NFC? I mean, there's Philly, there's Dallas, there's Minnesota, there's Green Bay, there's Tampa Bay, there's New Orleans, there's the Niners, there's the Rams. Anybody else you want to throw in there? Seattle, Arizona. Maybe some people would take a flyer and say that maybe even Detroit will make a nice little run. We'll see. They're 1-2 out of the chute. 3 weeks in, what do you think of the NFC?
I mean, the NFC is looking pretty crappy, and it's kind of awesome. If you're a Niners supporter, it seems like every time that they've been good, they've been stuck in this NFC West, where first it was the Russell Wilson Seattle Seahawks who were the best team, and in my opinion, the Niners with Harbaugh were the second best team, and those NFC championships and a lot of those plays, they ended up becoming like, the default Super Bowl. So that is really annoying. Then all of a sudden they get good again, but now it's the Sean McVay Rams are in there. You got Kyler Murray, you still got Pete Carroll and Russell. Now the NFC is wide open. Tom Brady he's going to figure it out, but his offensive line is beat up, and when he doesn't have weapons he can trust, he just is not the same guy. Rodgers, he's going to find chemistry. It's already looking like he's, him and Dobbs might be kind of developing something, but again, how far can they go with essentially just relying on this A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, double-headed monster? Then, the Eagles, I get why they're favorites, because they probably will have the best record in the NFC, which will put them automatically, they'll get a bye, and then in such a wide-open NFC, if they have 2 games at home, I guess I get it. It's just, they have to show me that they can come back, because right now, I think they're up, it's something crazy. It's like they're up 80-7 or something in the second quarter. So they're going into halftime up so much, and they just can coast. I need to see Jalen Hurts come back on somebody, and unfortunately, we're not going to see that for probably a couple weeks at least, because their schedule's so dang easy. So with all that said, that's why I'm really not that stressed about the Niners. I actually think that there's a lot of good that to take away. Like, if you told me that they were going to have this potentially all-time defense with right now their strength being their safety play and their cornerback play without Jimmy Ward, getting coverage sacks on Russell Wilson, I'm feeling pretty confident about them, because, let's just pencil in Eagles, Bucks, Packers, and just for the sake of it, let's say Rams all make it. That still leaves 3 wild card slots. And those teams that they're going to fight it out with are the Vikings, who look kind of disjointed. And then it's the Niners, Cowboys, who are just kind of a worse version of the Niners. The Saints, Jameis Winston has back injury problems, and they look kind of all over the place. Cardinals look completely lost. Cliff Kingsbury is, favored to be first coach fired. Panthers with Matt Rule, no thanks. So I don't know. I would still pick the Niners. Gun to my head, I would still pick the Niners as long as Jimmy's healthy. I think the Niners, by the end of the year, I think Jimmy's going to have it figured out. And I think that the Niners are going to be your representative in the NFC.
The 49ers are the only team in the NFC West that has a positive point differential. Niners are plus 10. The rest of the teams -9, -23, -25. So I think the 49ers ultimately are going to be there at the end. Yeah. I really do. I think it really comes down to, Tom Brady to me looks quite a bit older than last year. I expect Rodgers,
not his face, but yes, I agree.
But as far as just his movements, he just doesn't look comfortable, and he's obviously operating behind a offensive line that's had some injuries. Green Bay lost Devontae Adams, and I think Dobbs is going to come of age, and I wouldn't even be surprised later in the year if Christian Watson comes of age. But Rodgers is to me, I don't see the dominance that people talk about Green Bay's defense. I think the 49ers defense is on a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah.
I think ultimately it could be the Eagles, Niners, and Cowboys, and Rams. I mean, this next game with the Rams is going to speak volumes about where the Rams are. And I expect I think the 49ers are quite a bit deeper than the Rams. Mm-hmm. So I think as the season goes, that will show itself. But yeah, right now I would say it's Niners, Rams, Cowboys, Eagles, and Packers and Tampa are good football teams, but there's something that tells me they're past their expiration date. Maybe more so for Tampa than for Green Bay. They're both viable contenders, but I still like the 49ers' chances. I realize that the season has not started well, and the Rams look good on paper, and man, Philly's off to a nice start, and Dallas is coming off of a great win on the road. But to me, the 49ers are still the best roster. And when you combine experience, playoff experience, and guys who have been there, and talent on both sides of the ball, all three phases of the game, I think the 49ers are as good as any team in the NFC. I know the Eagles are the favorite and should be the favorite right now, but I don't think the 49ers take a back seat to anybody in the conference, but they're going to have to get Jimmy playing much better football. They're going to have to minimize their turnovers. They're going to have to minimize their penalties, and they're going to have to start playing cleaner games. If they do that, 49ers, and one thing about it'll be interesting to see on Kyle Shanahan's approach to this game. The last Rams game was, I think, week 10 last year when they played them for the first time. They had to have that win. They were coming up, and in similar fashion, they had to have this win, or they have to have this win. Do the Niners come out with a, we're going to run through you game plan like they did last year and kind of turn it into a mono deal? Or do the Niners look at this Rams team and say, you know what? We're going to air it out and throw it all over the yard and not worry about the turnovers that we made last week and see if we can get our offense, which we think is potentially high powered, can we get it going? Because if the Niners do get their offense going at a really good rate, the combination of this overpowering defense and their improvement on special teams could make them the very best team in the conference. So the Niners offensively, that's a big question mark. What are we going to see on Monday night against the Rams?
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like they're the inverse of the Chiefs over the past couple of years, where the Chiefs, it seems like they come in every year and they've got this unbelievable, on a different level than everyone else offense. And then the defense always takes till week 10, week 12 to really get going, and they patch it together. The Niners might be the inverse of that, where their defense is so far above everyone else. I trust Shanahan to figure it out, and they might just kind of have to patchwork this offense. I mean, it's going to be interesting. If they throw the ball around the yard, that's going to speak volumes. I think that there also is a chance, and I think a lot of Niners fans are going to be unhappy with this. There is a chance they just run the ball and they realize, you know what? Our defense is so dang good, and we can't afford to lose time of possession, and we're just going to play this one safe. We're not going to go for it on a bunch of fourth downs. We're just going to kind of play complementary football, run the ball, kick field goals, get a touchdown, and then just hold the Rams down. That would be disappointing. It's not as fun of football to watch, and also just selfishly for national media, everyone was ripping on that game last week, the Sunday night game. I'd like the Niners to put on a show for the rest of the country.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the 49ers view themselves going forward offensively, because on one hand, complimentary football would say you got a dominant defense, run the ball and lean on your dominant defense, and you can get wins that way. That's one approach. The other approach would be, hey, you have a dominant defense, so you can take more chances offensively and throw the ball down the field and throw it all over the yard and mix formations and maybe speed up your pace a little bit and try to get your offense cooking, so that, because if you can, the 49ers have gotten involved now in 2 low scoring games and they've lost both of them.
And you had that feeling the whole time, like, oh my God, the Niners are dominating this game, and there's totally a chance they're going to lose it because they're just letting the other team hang around with stupid mistakes. Yeah.
So part of that makes me wonder, do you go with a run-heavy game plan and just hope to win a bunch of low-scoring games? Or do you look at this and say, you know what? The defense that the 49ers have is so dominant at all 3 levels. Let's get aggressive, see if we can put 21, 24 points on the board and win by 10, and win going away. I do think if the 49ers can get their offense really cooking, they could far and away. They could go on a run.
Yeah.
They could go on a run. Why? Because their defense is totally dominating. Their defense is giving up 3.9 yards per play last week, and they got Denver to go 3 and out 9 times. So if that defense shows up every Sunday, in this case Monday, and they, can start putting points on the board, they're going to win some games rather easily. So I'm interested to see how Kyle Shanahan views it. He knows he's got a dominant defense. He knows he has an improved special teams. Does that make him more conservative and, 3 yards in a cloud of dust and it's, run the ball and bury, have Wishnowski bury them inside their 10-yard line and make them face long fields and just see if you can win a low-scoring game? Or have you gotten burned now in 2 low-scoring games that you should have won, lost them both, and now it's like, all right, you know what, we're going to go the opposite approach. We got a great defense, so we're going to take chances on offense because we know our defense will back us up. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the Kyle Shanahan Week 4 game plan looks like, because to me, in my mind, it could be anything.
Yeah, it really could be anything. And I personally, I'd love to see them get out to a lead early, be aggressive early, and then if you want to slow it down after that, sort of like the Seattle game, as long as you can get out to a lead early, then that's fine. I don't want to watch an entire game where they're just playing complimentary football again. It's just annoying.
Well, hey, coming up next, we're going to let you hear some of the dialogue that we had inside the locker room this week. And we caught up with Aaron Banks, who's a great talker, Colton McKivitz, who steps in. Very important game for Colton McKivitz as he steps in for Trent Williams at left tackle. Brock Purdy is 1 hit away from being the 49ers starting quarterback. Caught up with him today. Kevin Givens, who's having a really nice start to his year at defensive tackle. We talked to him in the locker room today. And maybe my favorite conversation we had today was with Jeff Wilson Jr., the Niner running back, who, it was all on him last week. And will Kyle Shanahan diversify the attack and split up the carries, or will it be another, Jeff Wilson kind of a game? The thing about Wilson is he will run over you, and he's very physical. And I thought, that first half run where Burford blocked DJ Jones and Wilson cut it back and it went for 37. If he could mix in 2 or 3 more inside runs like that, that would help their cause. But we're going to hear from Jeff Wilson as well. And I thought, to me, he was fantastic. And it was also interesting listening to him talk about, what he does in the evenings, at home to prepare for a game on Sunday, in this case, Monday.
Oh yeah. He's got a great personality. He was, when, I don't even know if we aired this interview, but a couple weeks back we were interviewing Lenore, and I was like, hey Jeff, just because I saw him, he was messing with Lenore, and I was like, hey, you want to ask Diamador a question? Ask him a question. I gave him the mic, and then he asked just like a pretty dark question. It was like if the world was ending and you could only save one person in your family, and I wanted to give it back to him, but then I was like, as it was going through my brain, I was like, that's just no. I don't want to put that out. I don't want to mess with the man. So yeah, no, he's a great interview. And then also we got the great Matt Barrows. I mean, nobody's better talking Niners than Matt Barrows, man. So got him for about 40 minutes. So yeah, I mean, you're all in luck.
All good stuff. Who are we going to start with?
I think. I say we start with Barrows. Start with Barrows, build up the tension, and then get to the interviews.
There you go. Matt Barrows been covering the 49ers for years. Started with the Sacramento Bee, now covers them for The Athletic. And we had a great conversation. We talked lip reading.
We did.
I wonder why we talked lip reading. We talked lip reading, and we talked about a number of different things, and Matt Barrows was phenomenal. And he's coming up next on the Tales from the Bay podcast, the 4th edition, starring Ryan Smith and Larry Krueger. All right, time for the Tales from the Bay podcast and so much more. Larry Krueger, Ryan Smith with you. The great Matt Barrows is in the house. We'll give the band the rest of the day off. But you know what? The fans are going crazy. If I can, the studio audience. What does that tell you? Tells you money's coming. Yeah, that's right. Cha-ching. Cha-ching. Why? Because Matt Barrows knows his Niners. If I could deaden my mic, I would, and I would just have my mouth moving, because then you could have to read my lips. All right, that is the story. Why don't we start right there? That is like the big story on this, the day that we're taping this, is somebody got a hold of a picture of Jimmy Garoppolo, a close-up of his helmet, and he's either saying draw plays suck or your plays suck or whatever. He's expressing
the video everyone ran with is just some guy who's filming his TV on his phone. Like, why was the one of just like the actual broadcast not going around?
Yeah, exactly. So, Maddie, what was Garoppolo saying that we don't know what he was saying? Are you a lip reader, or do the people at The Athletic, have they put you in touch with one?
Well, that's a very good question. I actually Googled lip reader Bay Area to see if there was anybody in the Bay Area that I could get on the phone, if there's like a university professor that kind of specializes in it. So I'm on the case. To me, it's a little too convenient that's, the big storyline here is our, Kyle and Jimmy getting along. This started after the Seahawks game, really, where Jimmy was talking about, it felt like 2017 out there. And that brought the question, it seems like he's happier when, he's not fully ensconced in this offense and he doesn't have the restraint of the Shanahan offense. So to me, it's just too convenient that it's, he's screaming out exactly what everybody is sort of wondering. But everybody who I've sent it to, and the problem is you send out that clip and it's got the guy's interpretation of what he says. And I'm just wondering whether that's influencing what you think it says, whether if it was just fresh, you would come up with something else. But for the life of me, I can't come up with, it's not like, hey, let's have pizza tonight type of thing. There's nothing else that really kind of fits what his mouth is enunciating as nicely as, hey, your plays suck, man.
I mean, I either got, somebody was saying all of your plays suck, man. I read it as him saying draw plays suck, man, but it was coming after a passing play. Somebody has pointed out, and not a run play. So who's
Yeah, the all bothered me too. I didn't think it was all. That's not the motion your mouth makes with all. And I also wondered about plays, like PL words is a distinct. I don't know how to describe it. I haven't done much lip reading, but it seems like more of a PR word. He's saying "pr" instead of "pla." That's how deep in the weeds I've gotten on this. It's Zapruder film level.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Was there a second shooter? All right, here's the question that Steve Young brought up the other day, and I think it's interesting. He says, and it's not a point as much as a wish on his part. He goes, I really hope, and obviously Steve's a former Niner. He's still very heavily invested in the Niners. He would admit to you and I that he's rooting for the Niners. You can hear that. I think we all know that at this point, even though he works for ESPN. And he said, you know what? I hope that Kyle and Jimmy use this kind of second go around at a marriage as a way to kind of get better. Like Jimmy goes to Kyle and says, hey, look, this is what I don't like about, the way you've managed me up to this point, maybe since 2017. I'd like a little bit more freedom. I want to go down the field, whatever it is. And that Kyle would say, this is what I'm not loving about the way you're operating my system or the way you're preparing for these games. And that they go beyond their relationship of the past and grow. And that is totally healthy. It's a great idea on Steve's part, but I get the feeling that might be pie in the sky. And that, they could just be going forward as islands unto themselves. Not that they're not wanting to work together and nominally will, but that, maybe there's part of Jimmy that's like, you know what, screw off. I'm gone at the end of the year. And there's part of Kyle sitting there going, this guy's not salvageable. He's not fixable. If he was going to do it, he would have done it by now. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and he's going to keep doing what he's doing. And they're going down the road seemingly together, but have they really mended fences and kind of built up a better relationship, or are they just kind of going forward with the issues that exist in their past relationship? I know where Steve's coming from. I just think it's highly doubtful that they're going to do that. And that's just my read on it from afar. You're there and are more in tune with these personalities than I am. What do you think this second go around does for the relationship of Garoppolo and Shanahan?
Well, I mean, what I was just talking about after the Seattle game, Jimmy's first foray into the season, he did seem to be sending a signal. It wasn't overt. It was open to all sorts of interpretation. And on Friday, when Shanahan talked, he kind of chose to pretend not to really know what he was talking about. So there didn't seem to be a lot of interest in what Jimmy was saying. But to my ear, it was, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun on Sunday against the Seahawks. It reminded me of 2017. 2017 was a lot of improvisation is too big of a word, but it was a little bit like he didn't have the full offense. He was out there. He had a rudimentary knowledge of it, and a lot of it was just his kind of chemistry, his quick clicking with the Marquise Goodwins or the Trent Taylors, the George Kittles of the world at the end of that season. And that's what it kind of reminded him of when he came in right off the, off the bench. Trey Lance play sheet for that game. Some new plays that he hadn't really practiced before. Some go routes that usually aren't in the playbook for him. Or aren't being called on game day for him. So he did seem to be trying to communicate that to Kyle Shanahan. He didn't back away from it when he spoke on Thursday of last week either. But your point is also well taken. Shanahan, there's room for one star in this offense, and that star is Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan thinks that there's an answer for every sort of question that will come up on a play, that there should be an answer, an avenue for the quarterback to go in. And there doesn't need to be improvisation and things like that. So it's a great question. I would say that, Jimmy Garoppolo's big looming thing is that he's going to be a free agent in March. And he's trying to basically audition as best he can. So that would explain his motivation to kind of finally get into kind of a system or rhythm with Shanahan that suits him best of all. But that would require them not butting heads with each other, and this not dissolving into a public quarterback coach debacle. So that's what I think. I mean, I think you're right. I think, like I said, the more success Jimmy Garoppolo has this year, the more success Kyle Shanahan will have. They're on the same. They should be on the same page in all of this. But it'll be interesting to see how these personalities work because, frankly, Garoppolo has acquiesced to this point, and Shanahan has been more stern. So both guys are going to have to change their MO a little bit for that to happen.
Yeah, I was trying to think what was the real difference between the Seattle game, like you're saying, Jimmy was talking about, it was a little more free, like 2017. What was the difference between that game and then this game? And just in your opinion, did it feel like more of a Shanahan offense where it was just like, get it out quick, timing, rhythm, and perhaps the reason why Jimmy was not as sharp was just his timing with these receivers is probably not there to, he hasn't been throwing to these guys for a while. I mean, I noticed there was no Danny Gray. I thought Danny Gray has been really impressive, but the only thing I could think of is, Jimmy doesn't have the chemistry with him yet to make all those throws. And then also the run game was really, really non-existent. I mean, if you take out the Jeff Wilson run, the 37-yarder or whatever it was, and then the 18-yarder, Debo and Jeff Wilson combined for 15 runs for 29 yards. So essentially I'm just asking, like, what's your feeling as to why he played so poorly compared to his first week?
Well, I mean, I think your initial question is going to be a great one for Garoppolo this week. And Garoppolo, I think, is going to talk on Friday. So we're going to have to wait a little while. But that's a great question. What was different about the Seattle game? You came out of that game kind of raving about it. And the most recent game, which everybody came out saying that that there were all sorts of issues. What were the aside from the outcome, what were the differences in sort of the types of plays and all that? I think that's a great question. Whether he answers it or not, those are often two different things. But my interpretation of why they were just so bad in Denver. It starts with, Garoppolo is just off, and that happens sometimes, and it's understandable that it would happen to him in this game, given how odd his offseason was. I also think that we're not giving Denver's defense enough credit. I thought that they were really, really good, and I think probably by the end of the season that's going to become even more clear, and that kind of caused that offensive line. Which, 3 weeks ago, that was our biggest worry about this team. Oh, boy, this offensive line is young. Nobody's distinguished. How are they going to do? And they didn't play well. I mean, one guy played well, and then that guy got hurt in the third quarter. And then his replacement was just absolutely terrible. So the offensive line basically lived down to all of our low expectations for it. And it was the first time this season that happened. And, so I think that those were kind of the two biggest reasons why this team failed as much as it did. I mean, I wrote about this week that there were some big plays that Jimmy Garoppolo just missed. I mean, there's no two ways about it. When Deebo Samuel is being covered down the sideline by a linebacker, and this was a completion, but it should have been an 85-yard touchdown. I think, most days of the year with Jimmy Garoppolo, most quarterbacks in the NFL.
That's a house call.
That's a house call, and there were three of those, and they all involve Deebo Samuel. I mean, they're trying to get Deebo Samuel matched up on some of these guys, and on some of these plays, that was exactly what happened, and Garoppolo just missed him. So that's potentially 21 points right there. That's a little dramatic. Probably not quite that, but it's enough for a 49ers win versus a 1-point loss.
Yeah. There's certain things, to me, you're -3 in turnovers for the game. I mean,
not
I don't know
the safety, which is a turnover.
Yeah. You're -3 and you had a safety, and then mix in that you were 1 for 10 on third downs. It's like, you could talk about anything after that, and you're not going to win that game just on those things alone. The fact that it was a 1-point game on the road against what you're saying is probably a top tier defense speaks to what kind of talent this roster has. Denver dominated the time of possession. They had 70 plays to 52, 35 minutes to 25. The Niners had no offensive rhythm to speak of in the second half of this game. They only really had one offensive drive of note, and it came early on and was capped by really nice play call to Ayuk on the pick play that didn't get called on Debo, where Debo picks his man clearly, wasn't running a route at all, and Ayuk is just wide open on the weak side. They went two tight ends, one back in the eye. But what do you think as far as we fast forward this thing into the Ram game? Is this very, in my mind, Matt, it sets up very similarly to the first Ram game against the Niners last year, where the Rams looked like a way better team. The Niners were not going to get blown out of the water, and the 49ers almost need to play ball control and just run the heck out of it. And I kind of feel like, like Burford, for example, on the offensive line struggled. I think he gave up 3 pressures against Denver. But, man, on that Jeff Wilson 37-yard run up the gut, it was Burford who buried DJ Jones and caved in that whole right side. And the running back cut it back. Wilson cut it back, and that was the big gainer right there. So maybe they're a better run blocking line than a pass blocking line. I'm expecting a run-heavy game plan against the Rams. What are you expecting?
Yeah, I mean, that's how they got right last year. I mean, I think they were 3-5 heading into that game. That was the game that Shanahan said after the season that if they had lost that one, he really was going to think seriously about inserting Trey Lance, because all of a sudden you're playing for the future instead of playing for that season. So that was a huge one. I think it was 44 rushes in that game. 3.5 yards a carry.
That was like the first Debo running the ball situation. I mean, I remember that game distinctly because I put a little 100 to 1 wager on the Niners to win the Super Bowl before that game, and that's how desperate. I mean, if people forget, like last year, it felt like the season was over going into that game.
Oh yeah, and that was week 10. I mean, late in the season. I mean, people are freaking out right now. It's we're going into week 4, so. It was more dire straits at that point last year. I don't want to say this, but the 49ers could lose this game and still be okay. In the
NFC is not good this year.
Yeah, and it's still early enough that they can turn it on. They got a 2-week road trip in Carolina and Atlanta the next 2 weeks, so they could easily get right on their. They're going to stay in West Virginia again on their West Virginia sojourn. So, yeah, I think it'll be a lot of runs. I think they'll try to get Deebo Samuel. I mean, that was his worst running game since the midseason last year when they started using him there. His longest run was 3 yards.
Yep.
You never see that. I think his previous longest run had been 13. So dramatic difference there. They'll try to get it going. They usually do against the Rams. No Trent Williams. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
But in 2019 they had no. I forget whether it was the game that both Joe Staley and Mike McGlinchey were out.
Yeah,
but they played the Rams, and they were not going to beat the Rams. No way. Aaron Donald against a really beat up offensive line. There's no possible way they could do it, and they did. So it's possible. This would be a great way to get it going. But it does seem like every time the 49ers need to kind of get some mojo going, the Rams are looming on their schedule, and they usually rise to the occasion.
Yeah, they absolutely do. As I was listening to the Chris Forster interview again Saturday. I was at my kid's baseball practice, and I'm sitting there in the outfield. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm sitting here in the middle of a field.
Father of the year. Yeah.
Father of the year. I might as well multitask. So I'm listening to Chris Forster, and Jordan Mason came up, and he's like, I thought he was going to be more glowing. The kid was awesome in the preseason. He's like, yeah, he had a couple nice runs in the preseason, like almost to the effect of like, let's see what he does when the nation's watching, like he was expecting the kid to, wet his pants or something, or like he wasn't going to be up to it. I mean, wasn't a ringing endorsement at all. I mean, the Mason family did not ask for a copy of that interview, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe they did, because maybe it's bulletin board material at this point. But they only gave him one. He acted like he had no confidence in this kid. And then they coached like they had no confidence in him. He had one carry for seven yards. They only ran it 19 times. They threw it 29 times, which is interesting. It's such a low scoring game. And the run game is so, obviously they didn't feel like they could run. But Jordan Mason, to me, seems like he deserves a bunch more touches and more carries. Do you think we will see those carries in this Rams game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be come down to how much they're able to run it. I mean, the week before, they gave Ty Davis-Price a lot of carries. I forget what the number was, but it was more than I was expecting. They also ran the ball 45 times in that game. So I think that's the real explanation. I mean, you just can't run one guy that much, so you've got to spread it around. So, I mean, it's going to, depend on the game. I mean, what kind of game it is, whether they think they can run, et cetera, et cetera. I went through the 3 Rams games last year. And, we just talked about week 10, great rushing game for them. I forget what the total was, 153 or something like that. Debo was averaging more than 7 yards a carry. In week 18, it was like 135 yards. Debo was averaging 5-point-something yards a carry, scored a rushing touchdown in both of those games, but it was lower than week 10. And then in the playoffs, they only had 50 rushing yards, and Debo didn't do nearly as well, and he had no rushing touchdowns. So, I mean, there's a sense that the Rams eventually kind of caught on to what the 49ers are doing. That's a question I've been getting all week. It's like, oh, boy, have teams figured out Debo Samuel at this point? And I think the answer is no. I think the Broncos have a really good defense. They've got a defense that played against this very offense all throughout the offseason. So they're well-versed in what the 49ers were doing. And the Rams are too. But I go back to, the Mike Shanahan teams.
I think he's frozen.
Oh, yeah, because he was talking right in the middle there.
He's making a point. Yeah. Here, I'll
maybe we can see if we can unfreeze Matt.
Yeah.
There we go. We've added Matt back.
Oh, looking great.
Nice.
Bulky wireless connection, I think it was.
There you go.
I'm hardwired now in the old.
Look at you.
Ooh.
Not as great background. I don't have the Masterpiece Theater though.
I know. What are we looking at there? This is truly now. Now you're looking down, kind of. You're more.
Well, I am looking down at you, Larry. Yeah.
Yes, you're very much looking down upon us right now. Yeah, we'll move the boxes around. But go ahead. Do you remember what question we had asked right before?
I think we were talking about the rushing and Jeff Wilson, if you think that they're going to get the running on track with Debo, and Debo's going to figure it out.
Yeah, I was talking about how through the 3 Rams games last year, the rushing got a little bit worse per game. And so the question is, are teams kind of catching up with Shanahan, especially these teams that run the same offenses as him? And I was going back to the Mike Shanahan days, and he was running that offense year after year, and defenses never really caught up with him. I mean, they had a different 1,000-yard rusher, different guy almost every year. So that was Shanahan's explanation on Monday, is that there were some plays for Debo that we were really close to breaking. We just have to execute a little bit better, and I think that's right. I mean. There were some runs that if something breaks one way, he's not gone, but he's getting a nice chunk of yardage there. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can do it. They seem to get right whenever they play the Rams.
Were you surprised that they went from Trent to Jalen Moore and then Colton McKivitz? I mean, and if you're Jalen Moore at this point, it's like the old, what would you say you do here? I mean, what is his role if he can't even be trusted to play as a backup at offensive tackle. Isn't he the third tackle? Like, sounds like they're going to go with McKivitz. Sounds like they trust McKivitz more. But if they trusted him more, why didn't they just go to him right away?
Well, McKivitz was the backup tackle, but then he sprained his ankle in the run-up to the game during the week. So,
I didn't realize that. He wasn't 100%.
He had an ankle sprain like early on. It was either Wednesday or Thursday, and so Moore ended up getting the bulk of the practice snaps there. So they figured, okay, he's more ready. He's been kind of practicing against this defense all week. Let's put him in there. But it was short-lived. It was 2 series, and then he was gone. There were only 4 pass plays in those 2 series, and he messed up twice on those 2 out of 4. So he's batting 500, which isn't great. So McKivitz is ahead of him on the depth chart anyway. The only reason he wouldn't start is if his ankle somehow was problematic for the game. To me, the question is who's next? Will it be Blake Hance, the guy that they brought in right before the season, or will it be Moore? And my guess, the way things are going, remember Moore was a starter early.
He looked good. He looked good in preseason as a rookie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was arrow up for him, and then at some point he got passed up by McKivitz last year. And remember, McKivitz didn't even make the initial roster.
That's right.
And when they got him back on the practice squad, they're like, "Okay, you're a guard now. You're gonna play guard for us." And yet somehow Moore lost that job to a guy who didn't make the initial roster, and then they thought would be a guard. So something happened to Moore at some point where
it's mental.
As you noted, they just kind of lost trust in him. So I think it's only a matter of time before Hance. This will happen when Brendel. I'm sorry. I'm getting all my B offensive linemen mixed up. When Brunskill's hamstring is fully healed, he's going to go back to being the backup center. So I wonder when that happens whether this guy, Blake Hance, is going to end up being one of the backup offensive tackles.
So going back a little bit to the Debo thing, the thing that concerns me is just, I imagine Kyle Shanahan's in the lab all off season working on this offense to build around Trey Lance and all these new wrinkles, because like you said, it's sort of like the, Seattle Pete Carroll defense. It's like, it was great. And then all the coordinators got hired away. Everyone ran it. And then now it's solved. Same thing's happening with the Shanahan offense. Now, unfortunately, I think he could have come up with some wrinkles in the offseason if he knew he was going to Jimmy G. But now it's just, he's got Jimmy G and he's it seems like he's running the vanilla version of the Kyle Shanahan offense. And this league is about explosive plays. Where are the explosive plays going to come from? Because in 2019, it kind of reminds me actually of the Dolphins. It's like in 2019, the entire team was so dang fast. It was like Goodwin, Mostert, Breida, Tevin Coleman, all these guys, they had runners that could break explosive plays. Now, Jeff Wilson had that one for 30 plus yards, but that's not really going to happen again. Probably it was his career long. So where are the explosive plays going to come from if the running game is not as explosive? And how is Kyle going to have to change the offense?
It's a great point. All the speed is now in Miami and another town. I was just looking at the speed numbers. They haven't had a guy break the 20 mile per hour mark so far this season. Now they had 2 rain games and then Sunday's game in Denver. So we don't really have a great basis yet for that. But you're absolutely right, Ryan. I think to answer your question, they think that Debo is that guy. Last year, Debo came in to become the Raheem Mostert in the offense, and it worked. He provided explosive plays just about every time he was in the game. So that was the big sort of aberration in Denver, is that Debo didn't supply any sort of explosion at running back. He was good as a wide receiver. I think Jeff Wilson actually averaged over 6 yards a carry, and Jordan Mason on his 1 carry had 7. So maybe the answer is Mason. Maybe they start to gain a little confidence. I think going back to Larry's point about choosing Chris Foerster over his own children, it's that they just don't like rookies. They're very reluctant to play rookie runners. So you have to be a pretty special guy to be a rookie and to get a lot of play time in the system. And I would imagine that Mason did well in the scant number of snaps he did. But like I said, I think it's going to depend on how many overall carries they have in this game.
Let's talk about the Rams a little bit in the matchup, because I think it's really interesting. I felt like when the Niners came out in the first game, I think you said it was week 10, and they just gutted the Rams and they just ran it down their throat. It was almost like they made it a referendum on which team's tougher, and that the 49ers loudly stated, "We are tougher than you." And I kind of felt like McVay fell into that trap, because instead of really going to their advantage, which is Cooper Kupp and their pass game, they ran it with Sony Michel, and they ran it with their backs, almost like trying to, we can run too, kind of a thing. Well, by the time the NFC Championship came around, I think McVay was over the machismo factor and just said, you know what, you can't, like in game 2 of the matchup, they threw 7 passes to Cooper Kupp. They completed 7 passes to Cooper Kupp, but they didn't throw enough passes to him. In the championship game, I think they understood that, and the Niners never really stopped Cooper Kupp. But now the DBs are all different, right? You got Charvarius, you got a healthy Mosley, you had Womack at the nickel. Now you got Diamador Lenore if it holds steady from last week. What do you think? Do the Niners? What do you think of the Niner new look with Cooper Kupp and the Rams? Because one of the reasons the Niners didn't go to the bowl is they really just could never stop Cooper Kupp. And K'Wan Williams has now moved on, and they found new guys in the nickel. What do you think? Are they going to be able to corral Kupp?
I mean, you're absolutely right, and I don't think it was just the championship game. I think it was week 18 too.
Yeah,
they went heavy on Kupp in both of those games, and the 49ers didn't really have an answer. K'Wan Williams was fading at the end of last year. Remember, it was Dante Johnson who was tapped in week 18 to be the nickel, and he did an admirable job. But they do have young guns. Nobody stops Kupp, though. I mean, you hold Kupp under 100 yards, and you come away thinking, oh man, we won this outing, even if it's 95 and a TD. You think, boy, we did a great job on Cooper Kupp. So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I think this is something that Shanahan does. He wants to put these rookies under a lot of pressure in the week. We've seen this year in, year out. And we've seen the kind of the repercussion when that rookie doesn't have a lot of pressure. Remember Brandon Ayuk in 2020, they had to go with him. And then they weren't all that happy with him in the 2021 offseason. So I think this is a way of making sure that these guys stay sharp, and more to the point, sort of creating the right habits as a rookie that these guys are going to have in future years. I think the 49ers feel that's going to pay dividends down the line. So I think they like the fact that Lenore and Womack are sort of, going at it, competition-wise. I think they like the fact that, it was Ty Davis Price and Jordan Mason, but now maybe it's Marlon Mack and Jordan Mason who are sort of in competition for that number 2 role. I think they want that during the week so that it produces better players overall.
Kyle Shanahan has taken a ton of criticism. Right before you cut out, I was asking you a little bit about that criticism. There's people who want to trade him for Sean Payton. There's people that want to run him out of town. There's people that are trying to suggest there's a rift between him and Garoppolo. It's amazing how no matter what happens in a football game, it's always either the head coach or the quarterback's got to go. and it's like sometimes it's both, right? And it seems like we just filibuster we obsess on those two guys as a football watching public. And I've had people explain the theory to me that the TV shows the most images of the quarterback's face and the head coach's face, and so people always throw all of their whatever on those two guys. But when I ask players, when Ryan and I are down there talking to players, there's like this unbelievable respect for Kyle Shanahan. I don't see I don't see anybody I don't think I've talked to anybody on either side of the football that isn't incredibly glowing in their respect for Kyle and what he does and what he contributes. And yet to hear people talk about it this week, you'd swear that, he's on the outs and there's tons of pressure and he could be out any moment. And it's like, what? I mean, what do you make of the disconnect between the actual story and the public discussion of the team? Because we're now getting into like a twilight zone where they're only like loosely related.
Well, I mean, going into the season,
do you agree with that? By the way, that's my opinion.
I absolutely agree with that. I was going to say that going into the season, it was, Trey Lance. I mean, people always have to have,
it's Easton first take amongst the fan base. It's great.
A binary controversy. It's black and white. It's up versus down. Whatever you want to say. And
are you a Jimmy guy? Are you a Trey guy?
Exactly.
It's like, what?
Absolutely. It's one or the other. And
right.
Early on, it was Trey and Jimmy. Trey's not in the equation anymore. So you had to find somebody to replace Trey, and it's Kyle Shanahan there now.
Right.
So that's how I kind of interpret it on a very basic level. I agree with what you guys say, and I'll go one step further. When you talk to the owner loves Kyle Shanahan just as much. So, I mean, it's again, we just got done with week 3. You can't, no one's getting rid of Kyle Shanahan. He's almost got a built-in excuse already in that his starting quarterback got hurt in week 2. What are you going to do? I mean, even as the season tanks, even if they go 2-15, I don't think there's any change at the end of the season because of that sort of built-in issue right there. The guy that we thought was going to be our starting quarterback isn't there. How many teams are going to recover from that? Not many. So, I mean, I don't see that having any sort of legs, although, I do a mailbag each week. And
yeah, what are you hearing from the fans in the mailbag?
The majority of it is people not happy with Kyle Shanahan, pointing at Kyle Shanahan's overall record and saying, okay, if this guy's such an offensive genius, why did they only have 10 points in Denver? And it's a legitimate question.
Sure.
But I think over the course of time, it's going to right itself. There have been these types of hiccups, even in the 49ers kind of winning seasons the last few years. Bottom line is this guy's gone to the championship, twice in the last 3 seasons. So that's
got blown out either. Been had leads, were favored to win if you look at the live odds and from the fourth.
Yeah, and that's another refrain in the critiques that what did this guy do in the second half? He's the king of blown 10-point leads or higher. And these are all good questions, but again, I just don't think that it's up to ownership and. Ownership just really, really likes this guy, and more to the point, ownership likes the team that's been created over the last 5 seasons. One arrest, or one guy arrested, I should say. He was arrested multiple times. I'm talking about Reuben Foster, but I mean before that there was one a week. It seemed like there were a lot of issues with the team. And that was bothersome to a lot of people. So it's been better, is what I'm saying.
Matt, you know what? Just building off that, you've been around the team forever. So you know these guys. You've been around the locker room. This is my first experience being in an NFL locker room, and what I was told is like, look, man, they're just guys. You're going to have your bad dudes. You're going to have guys that are okay dudes. You're going to have guys that are pretty good. They're just people, man. Like some of them suck. Every single person that we've talked to, we've shown them respect and they show it right back. They've been all open books, just super nice. They all seem, it's kind of crazy. The defense is so ferocious and it seems like every one of them, even their stars, are like super kind of intelligent and mild mannered and kind of like laid back. But then when they get on the field, they flip the switch. And it's like being in this locker room, it's like this is when people talk about creating a good culture.
this feels like a freaking great culture. It seems like they specifically go out of their way to get good culture guys. And so from that perspective, I mean, how is this locker room, would you say, different than the past couple years? And I guess maybe expand on that point of like, that's another thing people want to build controversy. Oh, Jimmy hates it. But it's like, no, everybody's singing Kumbaya in there.
No, for sure. I mean, it's been good for several years now. And it was not good before then. And I think that has to do with, with John Lynch. This has been a major criterion for him, is to kind of build that kind of locker room. And, they had some good guys to begin that. I think Joe Staley, to me, it went from Justin Smith was sort of the king of the locker room a decade ago. And so the culture of the locker room basically revolved around him, and the Justin Smith personality and the Jim Harbaugh personality were really close. I mean, very kind of rough and tumble, workmanlike, blue collar, but not so media friendly. And there was a lot of extracurricular stuff, especially involving alcohol. I mean, that to me kept popping up as the source of a lot of people's issues. A lot of the arrests were alcohol related. And then sort of Joe Staley inherited that mantle as locker room king. And I feel like he's passed that on to George Kittle and Trent Williams and Jason Verrett. And these are all just really, really good guys. And Kittle has sort of a sweetness is not a word you use with football players a lot, but there's a friendliness, a banter, a real kind of personality there.
He's a Midwestern guy, right? I mean,
exactly. But there's a creative element to him too. You see it in the tattoos and the wrestling, and you see it when he's at the podium. And he's the loudest, the biggest voice in that locker room. And I know it hasn't seemed that way this year because he's been injured, but he's the guy I would point to being the spokesman of the team. I think that goes a long way. I mean, it's kind of top down. The locker room takes on the personalities of its leaders. And, you see that when you guys are in there doing your one-on-ones.
It's interesting that this is you said you're getting a lot on Shanahan in what you're doing in the chat. We don't have the same thing you're doing. It's almost kind of the same. It's the public. Here's one from Ramelia SB Super Bowl Champs Report. He says Kyle Shanahan has gotten a pass by the media. He's into his 6th year, and as we speak, he's 40 and 44 as a 49er head coach. He goes on to say, with Shanahan, there's always excuses. There's only a quarterback he's won with is Jimmy Garoppolo. Meanwhile, the 49ers team is loaded, and the media isn't letting Kyle have it. Amazing. If you want to react to that, I mean, I don't know what we as a collective are supposed to do. The reality of the situation is not lost on any of us, which is, to me, if every NFL coach was a free agent tomorrow, who would land the biggest contract? And it might be Kyle Shanahan.
I think it would be.
And if it's not Kyle Shanahan, he'll be very close to at or near the top of the list if every one of these coaches were free agents. That's my barometer. And also, I think he's an outstanding play caller. And I think, a lot of this is the media circus, and a lot of it's out of his control. He may not be a great personnel evaluator, and he may have dabbled too much in those areas in his first 4 or 5 years. And if you told me that was a fact, I wouldn't fight it. I wouldn't even argue it. That might be the case. But that's, to me, we're learning together what his strengths are and weaknesses are. What's your feeling on the media's handling of Shanahan? Are we collectively too easy on him? This guy goes on to say, Kyle Shanahan, football excuses genius. You probably heard a lot of these sentiments in your chat wrap. What do you think?
Bill Belichick also is 41 and 55 through his first 6 years. Throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that the first guy had a Rams avatar. I think he's just trying to
right.
lament controversy. Get everybody turning on themselves. If the 49ers fired Kyle Shanahan, they'd have a search committee, and the search committee would say, what we need? We need a Kyle Shanahan-like coach.
Right. Somebody could call plays and be trusted.
Look who the Vikings hired. Look who the Bengals hired a couple of cycles ago. I mean, these are all clones of one guy, which is Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. But Sean McVay is part of that Shanahan-like crowd. So, again, it goes back to your previous question about fans just kind of seizing on what Jim Harbaugh would call low-hanging fruit, which is the head coach. I think he's the best head coach that I've covered. But I mean, it's a good.
And point. You covered Harbaugh.
I covered Harbaugh. Yeah.
So you think he's a better coach than Harbaugh?
I think he's a better coach than Harbaugh. I think there's more sustainability there. I mean, I felt like Harbaugh had just kind of burned out in a fireball the first 3 years, and like I said, there was a lot of issues among that team, and you don't see that here. And I think Joe Staley would probably agree with me. I mean, that would be actually a very good question, because Joe Staley loved those teams that he was on, loved that 2011 team, especially the one that almost went to the Super Bowl back in 2011 against the Giants. That'd be an interesting one. But I mean, it's just, gosh, the people's patience level, the attention span level. This team's lost 2 games this season, and people want when are we going to get to Brock Purdy? I want to see Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy's got it. And then as soon as Brock Purdy has a bad game, it's going to be, Kurt Benkert. That's the guy that I really want to see in there. So, I mean, it's just nobody has the patience to absorb a few losses. It's I think that's a culture-wide issue these days. I can't watch a 2-hour movie without kind of getting up and moving around. I know that.
It's true.
So
we're all impatient.
I don't know. But I do. I mean, I'm looking at this, and it's not just 1 or 2 guys. It's a lot of people that have it. So you have to kind of, take it seriously and think about, do they have a point here? And I think they do, in that, there are some second half leads that are lost, and there are some missing points, and Shanahan and Garoppolo do seem to be not quite on the same page right now. So there's something there, but I think the fire the head coach answer to any time that there's a bit of an issue is the wrong one.
Yeah, the thing I never understand is it's like a lot of the same people that dislike Jimmy G and think he stinks also think Kyle Shanahan is bad and that he stinks, but yet Kyle Shanahan took this quarterback that stinks to the Super Bowl, or Jimmy G took this head coach that stinks to the Super Bowl. So it's like one of the logical math doesn't add up.
Yeah, don't try to apply logic to this.
Okay.
Yeah. Apply logic.
If God. A, then B. If B, then C. If A, then C. Let me ask you a football question that I think is kind of interesting. Or Ryan, were you going to jump in with a question? You got a question?
Oh no, you got it.
Oh, I was just going to ask Matt. One of the comments that Collinsworth had in the broadcast I thought was kind of interesting. And he said, the 49ers have found something in Mooney Ward, and they're going a lot more man-to-man on the outside with Mosley and Ward. And that frees up D'Amico to do a lot of creative things defensively. To me, if you're saying, like, what is a clear difference between last year and this year, it's that right there. So you got a true number 1 type corner in Ward, and you've got a healthy Mosley who's as close as they had last year to a number 1 corner. And now you've got some quality depth and the addition of Womack and the improvement of Lenore. And it's like, it seems like the improvement of the secondary and the arrival of Mooney have changed the dynamic of the entire 49er defense and what D'Amico can do with it. I haven't watched the All-22 for this week, but what's your sense of what the improvement on the corner has done to the D?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's allowed them to be. I mean, I think D'Amico wants to be as aggressive as he possibly can be. I think he wants that to be his calling card. And he wasn't able to do that in previous years because didn't have the right personnel at cornerback to do that. I wonder whether that's related. It'll be a good question for him. By the way, he's not that great at the podium. Not very revealing in his answers, but it would be interesting to know. I mean, I see Hufanga is basically a linebacker on a lot of plays. He's just kind of hanging around the line of scrimmage. He's a great blitzer. He's got great anticipation. I just wonder whether having Mooney there allows D'Amico to be more aggressive with Hufanga there. And that's where Hufanga needs to be. That's where he plays his best. And it's a great recognition of that. This is not a back half type of safety. This is a guy that, flourishes around the line of scrimmage. And that's been totally right and productive so far. I keep saying this every week. The Rams are gonna test that. I think they're gonna try to stretch the 49ers deep and see whether Gibson and Hufanga can hold up. But so far, and I think that's a reflection on Gibson as well. I mean, he's a guy I think is probably the best player these first 3 games that really hasn't gotten as much praise as he needs to. So I think he's holding down the fort back there, and that's allowing these guys to play more aggressively. It's allowing Hufanga to be 2 feet off the line of scrimmage. And to do some things like that. So so far so good on how that whole secondary has played so far.
Yeah, what's interesting is we were talking to Gibson, and I totally agree. By the way, him and Jimmy Ward have the same agent. They seem like they're buddies. When we were talking to Jimmy Ward, talking about Hufanga and Gibson, there's no like, oh my God, like I don't know, they're playing so well. Am I going to get the same spot? He's calling them my safeties. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jimmy Ward, how he kind of they move things around, and because I think Gibson and Hufanga, of course, both have earned a lot of playing time, and to that same point, I mean, you've seen a lot of great defenses. Those Harbaugh defenses were awesome, man, and then 2019 was great. I mean, the secondary had some issues, but it was great defense. I mean, where do you think this defense stacks up after? I know the Rams are going to be a test, but I mean, I'm so used to Russell Wilson. If he gets 2 seconds back there and he's not touched, it's going to be a moonball to Lockett or DK. And they were getting coverage sacks. Like I'm not used to that. So yeah, how do you think this thing stacks up, and how do you think they're going to perform against the Rams?
Yeah, it's a great question about where this defense stacks up in any of the ones from, say, the last 20 years. I mean, I think that I was just talking about Justin Smith. That line had Justin Smith, Ray McDonald. It had Ahmad Brooks, underrated pass rusher, and it had Aldon Smith. And then it had Navarro Bowman and Willis backing them up. I don't think that this one, I think Nick Bosa is up there with any of those guys that I just mentioned. I just don't think that anyone else is quite as good. So I don't think it's as ferocious. The rules are different. I mean, you go back and you watch that Saints 49ers game from the divisional playoffs. I mean, that's like the last old school hitting game that we've ever seen.
That hit on Pierre Thomas.
The hit on Pierre Thomas, but it was like that all game. And then the next week against the Giants was as throwback old school as you can get. That was just a slugfest in the mud. So nobody's allowed to play like that anymore. So it's almost an apples to oranges comparison. I think this defense is the best in the NFL right now. I don't think it's a shutdown defense. I just don't think that those exist anymore. So there's always going to be the, Russell Wilson putting together that type of drive, and like he did in the fourth quarter. You can't expect a team to kind of snuff out another team like, the 2000 Ravens did or the 85 Bears did. I just don't think that that's possible in this day and age anymore. Quarterbacks are too good. The rules are slanted towards the quarterbacks. That's it. So it's as good as there is in the NFL, but it needs a lot more help from the offense.
One last one before we let you go, Maddie, on the matchup. Looking at the Rams-Cardinals box score from this last week, the Cardinals ran 81 plays. The Rams ran 46 plays. I mean, that is a huge difference. The Cardinals had 23 first downs. The Rams only had 15 first downs. Cooper Kupp was held in check for the most part. He had 4 catches for 44 yards. Skoranek was the Rams' number 1 receiver. But the stat that jumps out is that Marquise Hollywood Brown caught 14 balls. He was targeted 17 times. He caught 14 for 140. And I'm thinking of the 49er receivers, who's the most like Hollywood Brown? It's probably Danny Gray. I didn't see all those passes from Kyler to Marquise Brown. There's probably an array of them. But do you think Danny Gray will be up this week? Do you think they will utilize him? Because they emphasized that he wasn't just a burner, that he was tough as well. And, maybe anytime you're talking about needing to improve your offense, it always, to me, it's a speed game. And you drafted, him and you signed Ray, and it's like, hey, why not put a little bit more of your speed on the field and make the Rams match up with it a little bit? And if you can, do what the Cardinals did and play ball control. I mean, the Rams won the game, but they only scored 20 points. To me, that might be the recipe for success. Feed Danny Gray and take advantage of that speed, but also, if you can, dominate the time of possession and keep Stafford and Akers and Higbee and Kupp and all these guys on the sideline as much as possible. What do you see as the game plan this week in your mind?
Well, I want to comment on your Danny Gray suggestion. I mean, the way I remember the 2017 season, since that's been in the news recently, is that Garoppolo came in and he was mostly kind of doing some New England Patriots stuff, like hitting Trent Taylor for short stuff, this, that, and the other. But when you actually watch it, Marquise Goodwin, that was his high water mark that 2017 season. He almost had 1,000 yards that year. And my thought was that, okay, when Garoppolo came in for those last five games, Marquise Goodwin probably, his numbers went down. They didn't. He had 3 games in that span. There was one at 95 yards, but 2 other ones well over the 100-yard mark, which suggests that Garoppolo and a speed merchant are not exclusive to each other, and that Marquise Goodwin and Danny Gray, their speed is comparable. These are both really, really elite guys. So I think that it absolutely can work. I think the issue with Danny Gray is that he's a rookie. And even talking to his former coaches and guys at SMU who love him to death and think that he's going to be an excellent pro, to a person they all say, okay, he's still developing. This is going to be sort of a longer term thing. It's not going to be right off the bat. So I think that whatever that means as far as, route running, as far as separation, he's still learning that right now. But I think the potential is there. And to Ryan's earlier point, they could use the speed element. Just get the ball in his hands on one play. Because he did do a lot of the crossing route stuff. He did do a lot of the screen stuff that they do with Deebo Samuel. It would be a nice play if you've got Deebo Samuel on one side of the formation. You kind of fake the screen one way. I know the defense would, especially the Rams defense would go after it real fast. And then you just turn around and throw the same exact play to Gray on the other side. He'd be gone. So, that might be a really kind of nice secret weapon to break out in this game. Well, now that we've talked about it, it's not going to be so.
I know you just did a touchdown play, Matt.
Now that we've outed the game plan on the Tales from the Bay podcast in London,
I know that Sean McVay watches this podcast very closely.
Exactly, he's all over this podcast, so we're gonna have to scrub it. He's
right here.
Matty, for people who follow you on The Athletic or have thought about it and are like, hey, you know what? This is the time I'm going to make the investment. Give people an idea of what you and Dave Lombardi have cooked up each week, and what do you typically provide for your readers as we approach game day and this week on Monday.
Yeah, well, right after the game, we kind of break down the game, position group by position group, who stood out, what the snap counts were. So that's up right now. Dave's got a story going tomorrow about basically answering the question you just asked. I mean, what can the 49ers do to kind of pack a little bit more wallop into this offense? And then I've got the aforementioned mailbag coming, I think, on Thursday morning, where I'm going deeper into this Shanahan Garoppolo relationship that everybody seems to be seizing on right now.
This guy does as good a job as there is, folks. Right here, Matt Barrows. What year was your first year on the beat?
2003, which was Dennis Erickson's first year. And that roster included T.O. and Jeff Garcia and Garrison Hurst and Derek Deese. And then the next year, all of those guys were gone. And surprise, the 49ers went 2-14 that year. So it turns out that talent is important to winning. That was my first lesson.
Who knew?
In the NFL. Talented guys win games. Not talented guys lose games.
There you go. I'll never forget my first meeting with Dennis Erickson. He's like, they're like, hey, Dennis, this is Larry Krueger from KNBR, and Larry, hey, this is Dennis Erickson. And I go, Coach, really a pleasure to meet you. And he didn't hear the introduction, so he's like, are you from Coors? And I said no. And the disappointment on his face, I mean, it was like, you're not from Coors? Oh, man, I was told there was going to be a guy from Coors here. I got to get that kegerator put in my office, like right away. And I'm like, I think that guy over there might be from Coors. And he literally left and walked over to them. You from Coors? He was really interested in the kegerator, getting that thing set up. But he had tremendous eyewear, if you remember. He had great sunglasses and he had designer eyewear. He looked very chic on the sideline. All right, the thing that I respect the most about you, Matty, is you ask direct questions. You're not a softball artist, but you're not a gotcha guy. And I'm just kind of wondering, because this could happen to anybody, and Ryan can appreciate it now because we're in the locker room, 2-3 times a week now. Have you ever had just the player that you thought you asked a normal question, but man, it didn't strike him right, and he just kind of blew up on you? Either he just started going in a weird direction you didn't think, or kind of got angry at the question or the notion, or thought you were going in a different direction and kind of misunderstood. And because there's lots of room in the locker room setting for what we would call miscommunication. Have you ever had anybody, because you do ask direct questions, but they're not like gotcha questions, and I never hear you do this one. In 2019, you said, and then read somebody back their quote, and then all of a sudden ask your question as the premise was that quote. You don't really do that move. But have you ever had anybody kind of just like, you're a mild-mannered guy, but just be like, get the hell out of my face? Has anybody ever lost it on you, or ever been like, so like you actually were like, oh man, I wish I could, stay at a Courtyard Marriott right now?
Yeah, for sure. And most of my recollections come from early on in my career. And I don't know, it's sort of a good question whether I've kind of steered away from certain questions because of those experiences. But one sort of lesson I learned is that I remember I was asking a linebacker who I thought it was common knowledge that this guy had sort of struggled, in some earlier games. And I forget how I phrased it, but it was something along the lines of, redeem yourself. I think that was the phrase.
Right.
And this guy just wigged out. I'm not going to say his name, but my takeaway was that the thing with these football players is that, and this has changed with social media, but at that point, every bit of feedback they get from their coaches, from their teammates, from friends and family is all positive. It's all positive all the time. So when you even suggest that maybe you didn't play that great in this game, it's like, what? I've never heard that before. It was like the person couldn't believe that I would suggest. I mean, this was during that 2-14 season. So
right.
You weren't lighting up the league that year. So that struck me as that it's all, and I guess this is a sports psychology thing. It's all positive reinforcement all the time. You did great in this game. You did great in this game. Maybe you could do this a little bit better, but you were awesome in this game. It's like the compliment sandwich where you
right.
I tell you, you did this great. This needs work, but you did this great. So you come away thinking, wow, I'm really killing it out there. So that's something I've always kind of kept in the back of my head since then.
Yeah, you gotta kind of know that in their world, even if, the old saying, if your premise is wrong, your conclusion's wrong. But if they don't, your premise could be right. But if they think it's wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like one of those things. Matty, awesome stuff. We love talking with you. You're great stuff. Great commentator as far as what you and Dave do audio wise, in addition to in print. Keep it rolling, man. And we will see you, as they say, down the proverbial road. And good luck to you and Dave and all the good people at The Athletic. And thanks for stopping by on the Tales from the Bay podcast.
Thank you for having me on, and I promise not to interrupt any of your one-on-ones that you and Ryan have with the players in the locker room.
Oh gosh!
Damn it! You can feel the people coming over your shoulders. I want to be like Draymond Green on a rebound and just throw an elbow.
Yeah, I won't do that.
Fonzie, boom. Vern knocking you off the stool.
Oh. I would love to do just a 30-minute live stream where Matt just gives me all these pointers, because I'm going in so blind right now that
seriously,
I'm overly confident.
No, it's better. It's better to go in blind. Just be, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I guess.
I'm trying. I started early with Ryan. I said, look, let's just work on the we's and the us's.
Yeah.
If we can get rid of the we's and the us's, we're going to be ahead of the game.
Yeah.
We'll take it from there.
Yeah, you're not part of the team, Ryan. You're not getting the ring if they win that Super Bowl.
Good stuff, Matty. Thanks again.
All right, see you guys.
See ya. The great Matt Barrows, who is awesome. He is terrific from formerly the Sacramento Bee. Now you can catch him in The Athletic, behind a paywall, but in The Athletic. Good stuff, Rye. That was good. I enjoy talking with Matt. Matt, you know what I love about Matt is that he listens to your question, gives you a thoughtful answer, sometimes gives you some background like that we would never normally have. And then I think overall, when you get a little background, don't you feel like you kind of know more about the topic? Like after we do our interviews with him, it's not just about like his opinion on everything. I actually feel like I know a little bit more about like how we arrived at this point, because he'll give you a little, in 2017, it started this way. And then what it evolved when this coach came, and then you know what I mean? And it's like learning history as a story, as opposed to facts. This game they lost, that game they lost, this game they won, that game they won. He's got more of a narrative on the thing. And I think it's really good. I think it is really good coverage. And, Dave Lombardi, excellent as well. Matt Barrows, excellent. The Athletic.
All right, here in the Niner locker room with Niner number 2 quarterback now, Brock Purdy. Brock, does your preparation, anything that you do changes when you move from 3 to 2 on the depth chart, or is pretty much the same?
No, sir. It's all been the same. Yeah.
Straight.
Yeah.
No differences.
No, sir. No, I guess, they ask me more questions and stuff in the meetings to make sure that I'm ready and that kind of stuff. That's really been the only difference. Other than that, the first 2 weeks I went about as if I was a starter, and if anything happened, I'd be ready. And that was the situation after Seattle, and so in terms of my preparation and everything, it's all been the same.
Now, as a number 2, you get to run the scout team, though, right? And you get those reps. Does those extra reps, even as small as they may be, help your preparation or help you get ready for Sunday?
Yeah, most definitely. I think really the physical aspect, taking drops, going through the defense, making throws on the run, just in the pocket, stuff like that, it really does help. Doesn't matter if it's, the other team's scheme or anything like that, but the fact that I'm, going through reads and throwing the ball on time against a starting defense is what matters. So that's been really good.
Now obviously you're studying defenses as a quarterback, but you're also studying Stafford as a scout team guy to give your defense a good look. How do you break that up? I mean, do you really sit there and watch Stafford and his nuances and tendencies, or is it really more just you're running their plays, but you're spending all your time really prepping and looking at their defense?
I think both. I've obviously watched some clips on him and what he does so that I can give my team a good look. But also at the same time, I'm still trying to work on my game and get better myself. So there's definitely a balance there, but I think at the end of the day, I'm trying to give them a look and do what's best for the team. So that's really how it's been so far.
You've played a lot of football. When an offense gets out of rhythm a little bit, is there any tricks to the trade to get them back in rhythm? Is it practice reps? Is it film discussion? Is it any nuances that maybe we're not thinking of that can help a football team on offense establish a rhythm?
I think both of those things that you said, in terms of meeting, discussing, the film, breaking it down, this is what went wrong, this is, went well. And then obviously getting back on the field and practicing like, all right, last week's over with, let's go and let's play football. Let's just get out there, throw the ball, run the ball, run our plays, get into a rhythm again. All those things matter. And so putting everything behind you, moving on, like it's a long season, but every single practice and every rep is valuable, and we all know that. So just getting out there together, I think gets guys back into a rhythm. So,
I think so much of football is about the small things, right? First week, maybe too many penalties. Third game, too many turnovers. That's like an essential element. You got to minimize that. Is there a key to doing that, to minimizing turnovers, to minimizing penalties, minimizing the mental mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just the preparation, going into the game, especially like last week on the road, like knowing that we're going to be in a hostile environment like that, making sure, we're checked off in every area and ready for anything that comes our way. I think those things can be better. We all know that, and those are things that you learn early in the season. As the year goes on, we can expect those things again, going forward. But other than that, like we got a bunch of vets in this room, a lot of experience. Guys know, they learn from things early on in the season and move on quickly and learn from them quickly. So I'm not, worried or concerned about this team. Like I know these guys will handle it in the right way moving forward.
How is it for you and your family? I mean, after Seattle, of course, I'm sure you've been noticing the uptick in media and people wanting to talk to Brock Purdy and talking about you on radio and whatnot. How is that just, are you just trying to block it out? Or?
Yeah, for me, I don't pay attention. I'm, talking to my parents and stuff. They're excited for me. So they're like, man, are you ready? And all that kind of stuff. So that's been cool. But other than that, they handle that. I handle my thing, coming here and just being another teammate, another guy. It's another day for me and be ready for my opportunity. But for them, yeah, I'm sure they're taking it in and excited for their boy, for all the work that he's put in his life to be where he's at. So, yeah.
When when Trey went down in that game and boom, Jimmy's up and he's got to be like into it right away. You started most of the time at Iowa State. Did you ever have coming off the bench moment where you're watching the game on the sideline and all of a sudden, all right, I'm up, and you got to go from I'm watching to I'm playing, different mode in a just snap of a finger? I know you started most of the time at Iowa State, but have you ever come off the bench, maybe even going back to high school?
Yeah, honestly, my freshman year in college, when I wasn't starting, going into the game, I had an idea that I was going to get in, but that's always been my thing as a backup. Like I want to be ready and in the game and in the moment, not just hearing the plays, but what's the play call, what's my read, what's the defense doing, what am I doing with my motions, what am I doing with my eyes? Like that's literally every snap on the sideline, what's going through my mind. And so my freshman year when I knew that I was going in and my opportunity was arrived, I was okay, I'm just going to go out and do the same thing that I was doing on the sideline and film at practice and just let it go from there. So the last game in Denver is the same thing, being suited up, and that was my mindset. Even before that, before I was suited up, even though I wasn't dressed, I was still going through the checklist of what I'm doing pre-snap, in the huddle, all that kind of stuff. So.
A couple last ones before we let you go. We got Brock Purdy here in the Niner locker room. How complex is this offense from your perspective? You played a lot of football, so you've seen other offenses. So, what are the layers of complexity in this offense? Is it more complex than other offenses you've been in?
Yeah, I think Kyle does a great job of getting us in the right formations and the right scheme, depending on who we're playing and whatnot. Obviously it's a whole new level, and it's just a different style of ball. Getting the play call from the headset, telling the guys in the huddle, breaking the huddle, those kind of things. That's all different, and I like it. It's just new to me. College, you get the signal from the sideline, you run the play, and everyone looks to their certain coach, and then they look back down on the ball, and then they run the play. Now, they're relying on the quarterback to spit out the play and run it. So that's been a whole new thing, and being able to digest what coach is saying, how we're taught, and then being able to tell the guys around us what to do, it's a whole new thing, and honestly, I like it a lot. But there's definitely levels, and it's a process to learning the playbook. I didn't come here the first day, week, or 2 weeks I know this and it's going to be easy. It's literally been from summer up until this point. I'm still learning, so it's been a process and a grind, but I think I can do it, and I know I can. I believe in myself, and all the quarterbacks that I've met so far have been telling me man, it's a process. You just gotta trust it. So
preparation obviously is huge. You guys do a ton at the facility. Night before the game, Saturday night before the game, are you hey man, the hay's in the barn, let me just watch some movies with my girl or make some food, or is it about hey, I want to watch more cut-ups, I want to do more, I want to grind through more percentages, look at the game plan more? What do you want to do that final night before the game? Do you want to put it away, or do you want to grind it more?
Yeah, I think throughout the days when I put in all my grinding and studying and everything, I like to leave myself a good hour before bed where I can shut off and just be whether that's reading or just on the phone calling my family, whatever. I like to get away for a good hour at least, but other than that, man, it's all ball for me. I love studying and being in it, trying to think of ways that I can prepare better and things like that. But even in college, I learned having a fine line of a balance of studying too much compared to being free. There's definitely a balance there, and I've learned that through 4 years of playing, but I'm still continuing to learn that as well. But definitely like to put in my work during the day and then have a good hour at night. So
I made some money on your boys the other day against Iowa. That was a pretty low-scoring game. On Saturdays, you get any side cone time?
Yeah, no, I like to check in on my clones every Saturday I have so far. Those are my boys, and it's cool because I literally just played with them last year. Right. As you guys say, as you go on throughout the years and guys that graduate and things like that, then it's a little more hard to be in it. And they love their teams and stuff, but when the guys that are playing, it means a lot to you. And so for me, those are my boys still playing. So, yeah, I love watching and tuning in every Saturday.
Hey, thanks for the time, right? You got one more?
Yeah, I got one last one. So, you making me feel crappy. You're saying you leave yourself an hour and you maybe call your family or read. I don't know how many books I've read in the last 5 years. Maybe one. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So you don't get into any Netflix or video games or anything like that? I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
No, you're good.
You just chill.
Nah, for me, man. Every once in a while, if it's a weekend or if we got 3 days off, I might throw on a movie.
Okay.
Other than that, man, during the week, when I'm trying to have a good practice tomorrow and be ready for meetings and stuff like that, it's all studying and everything. But definitely got into reading. But other than that, man, when I have days off, guys around here have told me to watch Lord of the Rings and stuff, so I'm on that right now when I have time.
Just get into the full trilogy.
Yeah.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you.
I asked that stupid question about the bear.
The bear and the
salmon. We do a minute with you for preach. Sure. Appreciate you.
Thanks, dude.
All right, we're here with Colton McKivitz in the Niner locker room, who's obviously stepping in for Trent this week. And hey, no, not big shoes to fill, huh?
Yeah, my shoe might be a little bit bigger than his, but no, it's hard to beat replacing a guy like Trent.
He talks so highly, though, of you. And he's like, man, it doesn't matter who Colton's playing. He battles nameless, faceless opponents, and you're not wowed or intimidated by anybody. Where did that come from? That's got to be something that you've had for a while, huh?
College, freshman year got thrown in there, and a first rounder, and played well against him, and at the end of the day, it's just football. We're both here for a reason. And it doesn't matter what the guy's name is, or what he looks like, or how good he plays. It's just football at the end of the day, and you play your hind end off. Good things happen.
You've played a bunch of spots. How do you feel at left tackle?
A lot more natural with my hands for sure. That's the one thing I'm happy about going back to left is I get to use my hands, and a lot better at that. So I'm excited for left again.
What are the Rams looking like to you on film? It's a tough front. You guys obviously saw them 3 times last year.
Yeah, I mean they're always tough. We don't like each other, so it's always an ice bag game, as they say. So they 5 on the line, and it's pretty much one-on-ones, and then you got 99 over there in the middle. So it's a full-time job this week.
Is there more jawing in a game like this with divisional opponents that know each other? You guys know each other, and you're playing twice a year and sometimes for years in a row. Is there more talking in a game like this because it is a division game?
No, the games I've played in, I haven't heard much talking. Most of the time it's just, what happens on the play. That's the biggest talker there.
Run around or run through? It seemed like the first game against the Rams last year, you guys chose to run through. Is that a game plan that you prefer? That kind of, we're just going right at them?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of our thing here. Is we take pride in running the ball, and I think that's our game plan this week is get back to our identity and running the ball, and that's one thing we're looking forward to.
Hey, the rhythm of the second half wasn't there offensively in the second half. How do you rebuild that rhythm on the practice field leading into this next game?
Just making sure we're assignment sound. I think that's the biggest thing we got to do as a line, make sure we're covering our guys and making sure everyone behind us gets the right reads on what they're getting on the defensive looks and making sure we're on our assignments.
Right, you got one for?
Yeah, I mean, you're super laid back, dude. As I feel like a lot of people are in this locker room. Do you kind of flip a switch when you get in the game and kind of become more ferocious, or is this kind of you're kind of just? I'm not trying to rip you, man. I'm just
I mean, maybe just a little more angrier.
Yeah,
I guess turn on some crazy. I don't want to call it death metal, but some pretty heavy stuff. Metallica and that, and go to a zone. But besides that, it's maybe a little higher. But as you tell, we're all pretty laid back.
I mean, honestly, it's like if I'm playing like at 24-hour fitness, I'm playing basketball. It's more annoying actually if a guy that's like dominating me is like just super nice.
Yeah.
So, honestly,
hey, kill him with kindness, man.
Yeah.
That's what I always say.
Hey, last one I got for you. You get the reps this week, obviously. How much does that change your equation on Sunday when you get all those reps in practice leading into it?
It makes you get the looks now, and then come game time, everything slows down. So that's the biggest thing is, seeing it now, correcting it now, and then the game, once you see the look, you've already done it before, and then now it's just going out and playing fast and executing.
Good luck Sunday night. Appreciate the time.
Thanks,
Thank
Colton.
you.
Appreciate you.
All right, we're here in the Niner locker room with Jeff Wilson. And, Jeff, take us back to last week, first half. I thought the man over here had a real nice block on DJ Jones, Burford, and you cut it back, and it was probably the biggest gain of the game.
Oh, yeah, that was a good job by those guys up front. And as you can see, not only the guys up front, but our receivers as well. Those guys stuck and stayed on their blocks as well. So it was there for me to hit, you know what I mean? So it was just a matter of the right timing and having the right patience and the right press and getting back to the hole.
Yeah, you run incredibly hard, like a bigger back. I mean, do you feel that day after the game? Do you feel all the hits that you take?
It normally be like 2 days after, you know what I mean? So it's just like kind of like a collision you had, you didn't really feel it, and then the next day it's like, okay, and then that third day it's like, oh, where'd that come from? You know what I mean? But by the time we get back to Thursday or Wednesday, our Wednesday practice, I'll be back fine. So.
Yeah, you carried the big part of the load. Normally, Kyle rotates the backs quite a bit, but you're getting the heavy workload right now. That's just the way it's going to go in the early season, you think?
I have no idea. Like I said, every guy in our room can do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's not like that's the problem or that's the rhyme or reason. So that's definitely not. I think it's just leave that up to the coach's decision, and rather I'm in there play 10, 20, 30, 100, just give my all the whole time. So, and I know those guys that get in or whoever else comes in, they're going to do the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's a good room of guys. Jordan Mason got his first carry last week. What do you think of the young fella?
He's going to be nice, man. Like I said, it's just a matter of timing. You know what I'm saying? And like I told him, you stay down. This is a tough league. You know what I mean? A lot of things go on. A lot of things happen, and guys go down. So you always be ready and always prepare yourself to be like you the number one. So
you guys got a room full of guys that almost every single guy in that room could be the starter.
No, most definitely. Everybody attributes are like around the same. You know what I mean? It's no really like a Oh, that's the definite number one. That's you look at the running, or you go to the 49ers, or you go to another team. They got like a Derrick Henry, a Dalvin. It's not that in that room because all our guys are that. So you can't really pinpoint one person.
Hey, the guy that opened my eyes last week was Juice, that incredible catch on the sidelines, but they lined him up at the slot, running back, full back, tight end. I mean, he literally was everywhere last week.
Oh, yeah, Juice does it all, man. Like I said, it'd be a couple other positions try to take him off and put him in his day room, but, he's a running back, and he's our fullback, so he's the best in the league, hands down. You know what I mean? He's the greatest fullback that I feel like. Well, I ain't going to say that, you know what I mean? But since I played with him, I feel like he's one of the greatest fullbacks that ever played the game. So
yeah,
you should feel that way. Grab right there.
Yeah. Exactly. How about the Rams? You looked at them on film. Obviously, Donald up front. You got Wagner. You got a number of guys in that front. They don't have Von Miller. That's probably the good news. But what do they look like on film to you?
They look like the Rams. They look like who they always be and who they always going to be. You know what I mean? They're a championship team, and that's what they look like. Obviously, you can probably say their first games with the Bills wasn't all that, but if you look at the ones after in the game after that, especially in Arizona, like you can tell, like they're still the Rams. You know what I mean? And we still have to go in and play them like they're the best in the league, and that's how we're going to look at it.
Yeah, you can run around or you can run through. It seemed like that first game last year here, It was like you guys were running through. Is that a mindset? Do you like that mindset? Would you rather, just mano a mano run right over them, or would you rather run around them?
I mean, it doesn't matter. Either way it comes. Like I said, the way we play ball, if we got to go around you, or if we got to go inside you, or if we got to go over you, we're going to find a way to get it done, and that's what we're going to do. So however it come or however the game going, we're just going to keep our poise, stay down, and continue to home in on what we do.
How's your relationship with Anthony Lynn, and like how has he kind of changed if any philosophy of the running back room at all since he came over?
Oh man, he's great, man. Like I said, he's been around Coach Bobby Turner like a long time. So when we talk to him, it almost as if we speaking to the same person. You know what I mean? Like he even has some of the same lingo that Bobby Turner has, and that's the type of coach he is. You know what I'm saying, Coach Turner. Even I still say stuff to this day that he said when I first got here. You know what I mean? But that's just kind of person he rubs off on. You know what I mean? So to be kind of like a protege of him, I wouldn't say that because he's his own man, but to have that coaching from him, you know what I mean? I feel like he really utilizing that. Besides all that, he's been the head coach, so obviously he knows ball. He knows the game. It's not like he's a new person or never done it before. So he gives us a lot of knowledge, and not just only in our running back room, but as the game abroad.
Yeah, he's respected as any running back coach in this league. When you play a team like the Rams, division opponent, twice a year, guys know each other. Is there more talking between the teams in a division game like that because you guys do know each other so well and you do battle each other twice a year, or is it just like any other game?
I guess I don't know. I don't feel like that's on more so of our side. Like if it's us, it don't matter who it is. We coming up and we playing. You can be the Rams, you can be Washington, you can be Philadelphia, you can be Arizona. It don't matter who you are. We're gonna come and we're gonna bring it to you, and we're gonna play our style of football. We're never gonna let another opponent dictate who we are or the way we play. We're gonna play the way we play, and it's up to you to stop it.
When going back to college, do you think about when you came into the league and where you're at now? I mean, you've established yourself now. You're an established running back in the NFL, and you didn't have those acclaim coming out of college. You fought for everything you got. That got to make you feel good at this point that you've established yourself.
I wouldn't say established. I still feel like I got a long way to go, and I still feel like it's, you know what I mean? Like, still some respect I got to grab for some people, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I've been gunning for that since the day I've been in, you know what I mean? But to obviously, like as yourself to just say that is now, like, I really appreciate that because that's all I've been working for, just to let everybody know that, you know what I mean? I'm a part of this league, and I'm not just some pushover.
I was going to ask him, where are you from in Texas? You went to North Texas State, right? Where are you from? A town in Texas?
Yes, that's University of North Texas. But yeah, I went to Palestine. I don't know if you're kind of familiar. Adrian Peterson, same hometown.
Is he your guy?
Yeah. I used to watch his high school games at our high school in Palestine. So I used to watch him play way before he even got to Oklahoma or NFL. So I kind of knew the raw and uncut AD. So that's what kind of thrived along with my dad, you know what I mean? But that's what kind of along the thrive to make me want to pick up the game.
Yeah. That's crazy. I just totally lost my question.
Well, I was going to ask you about your dad. Did your dad play ball?
Oh yeah, he went to UTA before the program got cut a while back. He had some offers to A&M, but he didn't want to listen to my grandfather, so they kind of went that way. You know what I mean? But yeah, after the program got cut, though, he ended up having me and never going back to pursue football. So I think it was a great decision of his because I was able to live out the rest of his dream.
Oh, this is the question I was going to ask you. Do you ever just, when you're just home alone, do you ever just go on YouTube and like pop on the highlights of the Patriots game? You have like 3 tuds and just dominated Belichick in New England.
Nah, man, this league's so tough and hard, man. I don't like to dwell on those old memories. You know what I mean? Because I'm in the process of trying to make new ones. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah, I probably didn't see anything before. They got the family members or the little brothers and cousins that send me the clips and stuff like that. So I'll watch it. But before I just going to look it up, I like to stay focused and moving forward.
Hey, last one I got for you. You guys do a ton of work to prepare for your next opponent when you're here in the facility. When you go home at night, you watching cut-ups? Or are you watching movies? You watching news? You watching basketball? You watching baseball? What does Jeff Wilson watch at home? Or what do you do when you're trying to get away from the game?
Video games, perhaps?
No, man, actually, I don't play the video games that much like I used to. But, I definitely go through the film, go through my cut-ups, all the blitzes, and find techniques, and go through my little routine to see if I can find demeanors, if they got the telltales or whatnot. You know what I mean? So, obviously, that's every day I go home, make sure I look at that to keep it fresh on my mind. But after that, it's just, unwind, watch a little Netflix, you know what I mean? Maybe a little Stars, a little Power, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just kind of move it around. Just to, you got to get your mind away from football sometimes. So
I feel it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
My last one for you. So I know you talked about the identity. You're not going to get away from that. Niners are a running team. Do you feel like that is the identity still, like this year? Like, you guys are a tough, team. You're going to always run the ball. Like, is that still is your identity?
Yeah, and I wouldn't just say running the ball, and that's just our mentality, period. We're a physical team. We're a physical offense. Everybody from receivers to the quarterback, like everybody, you know what I mean? So that's just kind of our style of play, you know what I mean? Run it down hard. Like I say, it's up to you to stop it. So everybody know what we do, and we know what we do, so it's the fact of being on top of all our details. That way we can execute at the highest level and go from there.
Yeah, good luck Monday night.
Thank you, boss.
Thanks,
Jeff Wilson.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. You're like our go-to guy at this
Are
point.
we rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling.
All right, Aaron Banks here in the Niner locker room. Obviously, the Rams coming up this week, divisional opponent. You guys know your division opponents usually pretty well. What do they look like on film to you?
I think they look really good. I think their D-line's, exactly what you would think with Aaron Donalds and everybody up front. I think it's going to be a tough task, and we're going to try to do our best, put our best foot forward, and try to play them like we do every other team. Try to get a win. So,
Chris Forster last week was talking about how you and him discussed the difference between like practice reps for you as opposed to game reps. How does your body feel after a few games, and how have you learned a lot more because you're getting game reps?
Yeah, you're going to be sore after playing football games, especially at this level. So that's a given, but definitely learning as the reps come and the games go. I think I've kind of started to clean up a couple of things that were, week one weren't as good, and week two trying to take a step each week. So try to take another step this week against the best D tackle in the league.
Yeah, Donald is considered the very best. We can see his gifts. He doesn't give you a big target to block. He's very compact. He's obviously got great technique, great motor. What else about him makes him so difficult? What makes him the elite player that he is?
I think he's a really well-polished player. He's difficult to block. He makes guys' jobs hard, and that's that's what he's really good at. He's really strong. He has great leverage. Plays with tight hands. Plays low. He's kind of like I said, a very polished defensive tackle, and that's why he's the best in the league. So,
you guys busted Wilson loose for an early run. And it was a great block, I thought, by Burford on DJ Jones. But it was a struggle running the ball in this last game. What can you tell us a little bit about the matchup as far as Denver obviously was stout up front?
They're really stout. They play really hard, especially at home. They're a very physical team, and I think we just got to take a step up and try to get better again. That's been my mindset this whole time, and it'll continue to be what I'm going to tell you guys. We're going to try to get better every week.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. What about the noise factor for an O-lineman on the road? I mean, how much does that play into the difficulty of the task at hand when you're dealing not just with your opponent, a Donald type, but also the noise?
Yeah, I mean, the noise is, they call it the 12th man at a lot of these stadiums for a reason. Like, it's definitely, an impact. But as you get used to it and you play these games and you get used to it, it kind of starts to die down a little bit. But I wouldn't say it ever dies down. It's still loud, hella loud. But yeah, I mean, it's something that you're always going to have to keep in the back of your mind on the road and prepare for during the week.
How was adjusting to the altitude? Did that get you at all? Or?
Nah.
No, not at all?
Nah, it didn't hit me.
Okay, so you're fine for Mexico City then. It's different. A little bit.
It's a little higher. We're going to see. Hopefully I can, have the same feeling at that time. But, who knows? It might be a little bit colder. The air might be a little more crisp, being later in the year. So we'll see. Yeah.
How about the rhythm, the offense? A lot of guys were talking about how the offense just kind of was out of rhythm. What can you guys do this week to try to get into that rhythm? Is it something that can be done on the practice field?
Yeah. It's just gelling with the guys and, getting into a certain, cohesiveness. So, I think, as the days go and the weeks go, we start to gel more and more. And, week 2, week 3 team, that's not who you're going to be at week 10, week 17 in the playoffs. So as long as we keep taking steps and, putting our best foot forward and gelling as a team and as an offense, I think we'll be good.
How was the vibe in the locker room after the game and just so far during this week? I know that obviously the media and the fans are like, oh no, 1-2, but how are you guys treating it? Is it just like,
it sucks to lose.
Yeah.
You're always going to be upset when you lose, especially a game like that, but you just sit there dwelling on last week's loss. You're already beat for the next week, so you got to move on. Trent went down. Trent went down in this game. Jalen came in, and they brought in McKivitz. It looks like it's going to be McKivitz probably this week. Obviously, Trent's Trent. But how did the line compensate for not having the best tackle in the game? It's a difficult situation when you lose a guy like that. It's hard to step into those shoes. They're really big shoes to fill. So, we're going to do the best we can this week to compensate for the loss of Trent. But Colt's a good player. Jalen's a good player. Just got to let guys play.
Last one I got for you. Is your preparation the same week to week, or do you mix it up based on the opponent or based on maybe what the coaching points are from Chris? Or do you just have a very consistent, I want to do this on Monday, this on Tuesday, very formatted throughout the week?
I like to stay in my rhythm. I have a rhythm that I think is working all right now. But, I will tweak my day-to-day here and there depending on, something's bothering me in a certain aspect, or I do certain treatments, or if we're going to get certain looks or a certain type of player, then tweak it, from there on there forth.
Hey, good luck on Monday night.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Aaron Banks, appreciate your time. All right, we're here in the Niner locker room with Kevin Givens, former Penn State D tackle, and man, so far so good. In limited snaps, you're producing like a madman. Give me your thoughts on the way this season's gone so far for you.
Definitely going out to a fast start, but just trying to be consistent and just start off where I started last year, towards the end of the season. So.
I think the strength of your game is that you just get penetration and really you shoot into the backfield. It seems like you can beat a guy initially with your quickness. Was that always the strength of your game?
Yeah, I like this scheme so much because I could attack them before they can attack me, and I could, get up into them before they can start working me. So I like just being able to get to the punts first and then working my stuff instead of taking the brunt of the hits.
Eric is obviously a veteran. You got Javon here, but with Eric out, you got more reps. It's a technique-rich position. How much better are you right now as a player than when you came out of Penn State?
Definitely 100 times better. Just being in the scheme and the system for 4 years now definitely making me play faster and a lot of less thinking because I know the whole defense now, so I can just play.
Chris has you guys firing up the field and watching him coach. I love going out to practice and watching him. He's a madman, man. Yeah. How would you describe Coach Eric and his coaching style?
Chris is definitely different. I'll probably say, you just got to be ready to just bring it every day with him because I know every morning at 8 o'clock, he's getting it. He's screaming. He's ready to go. So it's definitely it'll get you amped up in the morning. So you just got to be ready to match his intensity.
I got to ask you about Penn State. What was it like playing there? What was it like playing with a guy like Parsons, who's now doing his thing? You were more of the senior. He was probably a youngster when you were there. But what did you think of him as a youngster?
No, it's just crazy to see how well he's doing in the NFL now. I mean, everybody at Penn State knew he was going to be the player he was now, but not so quickly. I mean, his first 2 years, he's up there as a Defensive Player of the Year. So that's crazy seeing where he came from. So, it's just crazy to see how fast and easy he's developed into the league.
A couple last ones before you let you go. You came in maybe around 280. What are you playing at now? What's your ideal weight? What weight do you like to maintain?
Probably 285.
285?
Yeah.
And, like, for the week, like, nighttime when you're at home, do you want to watch cut-ups or are you watching movies? You watching what are you getting ready to do at night? You leave this here or do you bring it home and watch the cut-ups?
I'll give it a break for like an hour and then I'll get back on the tape for a little bit. Watch that for like 30 minutes to like an hour, then just playing with the little girl back home.
Nice. How old's the little one?
21 months.
Nice. I got 4 of my own, so appreciate them, man. They grow up fast.
Yeah, I'm trying to get great.
Hey, one last one. As far as diet, I mean, when you're a college kid, you're eating like a college kid. Now you're a pro. You make your own stuff. Who cooks your meals? And what's your go-to?
My go-to,
or do you cook all your own stuff? Or
I usually do most of my eating at the facility, but if I do make some, it'll be from Trader Joe's. That's my favorite place to go to.
Oh, so cheap and good.
Yeah.
I've got one for you. I don't want to, get into the inside. I don't know if people are allowed to know, but what's up with the beware the dog warning? Is that are we
it's just a D-line thing.
It's just D-line. All right. You got that dog in you?
Yeah, we all got the dog in us. Yeah. Got to keep us caged up.
Last one I got for you on the Rams. What's their O-line looking like? I think there's a real advantage here for you guys in this game, but what are they looking like on film?
I mean, they look good. They run the same scheme we do, so they've been running the same thing the last 4 years. So we just got to, play our style of ball, and just try to win a game, win a game for our team, like we do every week.
Yeah. Hey, man, we're enjoying watching you do your thing, man. Keep it rolling.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Kevin Givens.
Thank you.